I'm sure I am.
Yes, you are. Welcome, everybody. It's episode 216. Sorry about the delay. We are all winners, and you are winners too. And that's what's cool about being here on this podcast. I am a fount of positivity today. Not every day, but today, sure. All right, Kelley, spells out Xotics. What was he doing? I think he was cooking tri-tips. That was his update for tonight. Very good. Thank you. Check him out on Reptiles Unplugged, Reptile Ads, or smalltownexotics.com. Bravo Zulu, she'll be in St. Louis next week. You'll be in St. Louis, William?
Yep.
You guys should hug. I'm just saying, putting it out there. Check her out, bravozulupythons.com. Justin, Stoneage Ball Pythons, he's still reading Clown Pied in the Pacific Northwest. Otherwise, beyond that, I have no idea what he's doing. Bless his heart. Andrew, he is starting to cool down his anorexia, and he's working on his 2026 ball python pairings this week. Very cool. Check him out. Ball pythons, rodents go for cocoa. And Gray Family Snakes will also be in St. Louis NERBC, and I think they're still doing buy a snake, get a free RGI shed test for show purchases only. You can check out availability at grayfamilysnakes.com. And Chris at BS Reptilia, I don't think I got an update. Probably breeding snakes and selling them on the internet or in person. That's my guess. I don't know what is available. His left is probably mostly Pituovis and a little bit. I think he still has a couple Longicatas last time I talked to him, and some Argentine boas. Very cool. We accomplished it. It's only been 1 minute, the all-time record. Sorry. All right, we have 3 guests today. Joe, Kate. It's like the Brady Bunch. This is hard. And William.
Yes.
And we're talking about selective breeding in ball pythons in general, like the overarching topic. And we'll hit many little pieces. And if chat has questions or, I don't know, concerns, we can spin off and do that. But that's the goal, because there's many kinds of selective breeding. And we're going to talk about whatever, all of them, pros and cons. But to start with, Joe, how do you define selective breeding?
I think most simply put, to me, selective breeding is a form of human artificial selection in which we choose animals based on the desired phenotype and pair them in ways that has some greater purpose or some foresight into a desired phenotype that we pursue. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of nuance to this topic. I think like there are forms of selective breeding that are like more active or passive, more intentional or not. But simply put, it's just artificial selection in pursuit of a phenotype.
Kate, do you have anything to add?
I mean, it's basically transferring in domestic animals, the slow form of domestication as well. Mm-hmm. So environmental factors can be used to selectively breed inadvertently as well. Mm-hmm. Everything else Joe said was probably, I agree.
Well, and what you said too, yeah, it's not only phenotype, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
William?
Just want to throw this out here. Did anyone else hear about the domestication of raccoons?
Yeah.
This is just
I thought it was really cool.
Like last few weeks, I've heard a few rumblings about something about raccoons being more domesticated or domesticating themselves in urban city or cities and urban places or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're getting shorter snouts, smaller limbs. Next thing you know, you'll have floppy ears and pattern mutations or coat mutations. That's the next curly tails.
Since you alluded to foxes, why don't you talk about the Russian fox experiment?
Oh, well, I think it leads more to Kate's, because I remember hearing you talking about breeding for more personalities and essentially domesticated snakes, whatever that means to someone. Now, when I think of snake domestication, I don't think of it like a mammal domestication. I think it'll be more like designer chickens or bird domestication. But I mean, the Russian fox experiment was not 60 years old now, and they did 2 experiments. They did one where they were testing for domestication, and the one they were doing the reverse where they were breeding for the most aggressive, I guess. And for whatever reason, limbs and larger teeth was a part of the more, I guess, higher adrenal gland compared to the lower adrenal gland that causes in more domesticated animals like our cats, dogs, and well, foxes and stuff too, and I guess raccoons soon. So yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting, and we see it in a few species. Ball pythons not so much because it's never been something that ball python people wanted to really look to do. I think we see they're less shy than they used to be, because I don't know if any of you guys remember the old VPI video when they had that original wild caught adult burgundy albino among all their their captive bred ball pythons. And the captive bred ball pythons were just cruising all around, didn't give a care in the world. And then this African wild caught was just sitting there in a ball, not moving. And they said in the video, they go, we would leave the room, it might peek its head out, and then after a few hours, it would finally cruise away to go hide somewhere else. You know, so I think in ways they are domesticated, even like we were talking about prior, even maybe without us meaning to do it. But I think in other species, I know short-tailed pythons, I've heard of people selecting solely off of personality over color. So they would just take the calmest, most easier to handle short-tailed python and breed those together. And you hear about it in retics, but I don't even think the retic community's really worked on much. I think it's more socializing rather than domestication, more like what zoos do with their animals rather than what pet keepers or people who breed dogs or something like that would end up doing. But you see it in a few species, though, as far as people trying to work on calmer animals and stuff.
And king snakes, too. I think a lot of people in king snakes are starting to try and breed for slightly less reactivity.
One's less inclined to eat your fingers and bite you. Yeah.
Well, that would have like perverse incentives, maybe, because like if they're not trying to eat your fingers, they might not want to feed on a normal food item as much. Because like these things are like in a cascade. Like if you select for no aggression, you accidentally select for neoteny because you're reducing adrenals. But there might be other things happening that we don't know about. But we're jumping ahead. Okay.
I got quite a few theories too.
A lot of these traits that we could talk about, all of them really, are not fully 100% heritable. There's like an environmental factor too. We don't really know what like the heritability quotient is, like what percent genetics versus environment play on that. So like, should people be doing sort of cohort groups where they're like, okay, I don't care what the morph is, I'm breeding for temperament, doesn't matter what it is, and just go for it? Or is that too...
I mean, I can tell you my process if you want me to get into it.
Okay, sure.
So I started coming up with this idea because, well, I come from like the dog world. So we kind of have, it's kind of this breeding for, consistent temperament and, mental and physical soundness is like one, dog breeding 101. I don't breed dogs, but I've, been around the show community and everything like that for a long time. And we ended up having our first clutch from 2 ball pythons that we actually got from nurse. He was getting out of, ball pythons, and the staff were nice enough to let us go up to the top room and hand select our first 4 ball pythons. 2 kids got one, and me and my husband both got one. And I kind of liken it to the whole like Harry Potter looking for his ideal wand, because they were pulling tubs, they were trying to find like the one that they connected with. And it was a pretty interesting experience for us. We were really happy to be able to do that. I don't think that's something that they do now. But that's what our first clutch came from. And it kind of got the idea of breeding for an ideal temperament and making sure that we're breeding for, if we're breeding a pet animal, setting them up for success in a pet home. So that's kind of where that started. Our process, I've done a couple of different mini experiments. We're really in the very beginning of it. It's probably really first, almost second generation of it. But so we have a control. I have a pair that was bred specifically for temperament, and then I have what I call my half and half experiment clutch so far, and we've had some pretty cool results. But we've picked adults. I went with adults because I figure that's if an adult has lived in its rack, or and been in maybe a more socially deprived environment, but is still exhibiting what we would call like curiosity, or less fearful responses, and more like outgoing as an adult, even though it's not necessarily been handled or had that socialization. I figure it'd be probably more something that they inherited from further down the line. I found it's a lot easier for me to find boys that are likely to be more, you pull the tub open and they want to come out and look around. They'll eat, really well too, but they'll kind of be like, hey, what's going on? More than it's been a lot harder for me to find females. And I think that might have been more outgoing males are more likely to breed. And it may be something that we actually ended up accidentally selecting for in our males. Whereas like our females are, don't touch them, leave them alone, let them do their thing. And so it's less necessary for a female to reproduce in the current captive environment to be outgoing. Whereas like if you've got a male that's shy, fearful, has a low tolerance for stress, he's not likely to breed when you take him completely out of his own environment and put him into a brand new one.
Yeah, there's probably like an ontogenetic change in behavior also. Like a retic grows up and he's fine his whole life, and then his testicles turn on and he wants to eat your face. So a female ball python might also do the reverse. She's like, listen, I'm busy right now.
Yeah.
So that's something that would confound the ability to select for it. But like I just having bred enough ball pythons, like sometimes like a single pair will make really nice babies from the get-go, but then the next year they don't, even if it's the same pair of adults. And I'm always wondering, like, was there an epigenetic change in the babies? Like something happened to the mom? And so she's like, you guys need to be a little more psycho next year because there's a drought or something. And there's no drought. It's in my room. But so that's the other thing I was like, that could confound temperament-based selection.
That's definitely a factor. The other thing that we did factor in was environment of incubation. We had one clutch that we hatched in our living room around my extremely boisterous ADHD family. And one that was in our kind of more quiet, my husband, our snake is in my husband's office, which is a whole heck of a lot quieter than my kitchen. And so far that really didn't seem to be a huge factor, but again, we're still in the very beginning phases of making sure that we can consistently prove this out.
Yeah, it's worth making snakes that want to be in captivity.
The idea is that a little kid is going to want to hold its snake. It's going to want to see their snake. The family's going to want to interact with it, and I would ideally like an animal that would not go off food automatically due to those stressors. And that's good. The main point of it, I think.
So with those particular snakes that you're breeding for that are more handleable or more, I guess, interactive, do you put them in an enclosure to see if they're, because I always thought when it came to ball pythons in particular, what their biggest downfall, because they're lower on the tropic level, they tend to hide and be more timid, is if you bred for the more like confident ones, less fearful, that they would more display better, kind of like a carpet or a green python. Not to say they have the perch, but they're not afraid to sit out, fear for their life that something's going to get them or anything. I didn't know if that was maybe something.
Yeah. We try all of our heartline animals, at least for a while, in a terrarium setting. just to make sure to see how they react to either staying on food. So like if I put if I take some of my more timid snakes out of here and I put them in a terrarium, they're gonna go off food, just because it's an environment. But we take the practice taking them into terrarium environments. All of them have to eat from a transition from a tub to a terrarium and then back to a tub. That's one of the requirements that we have because we want to make sure that we're not breeding out, like Jessica said, that we're not breeding out, a food response, because that's something you could definitely do for trying to get a more sociable animal. One of the snakes that I actually have pairing right now, she finally is pairing for us. She didn't pair last year. Is a Mojave Fire Het Hypo, and she likes to bask. Like she has a light and she likes to hang out under her light and just chill out and there. So we're really excited about her clutch. She's been bred to a Super Russo clown. So we're hoping that her babies are just as kind of want to be on display just as much as she does. And not necessarily want to be on display, but don't mind being out in the open. Several of the females that we have now are one of the animals that, like, when we have them in a terrarium setting, you'll walk into the room and they'll just kind of like poke their head out and look around and be like, what are you doing? What's going on? Are you going to give me food? Are we going to come out? And so rather than just walking in the room and they're just like, they duck. So those are things that we look for. Is it completely foolproof? No. I mean, we have some of our clutches that, are from our, like, probably the most outgoing male and one of our outgoing females. And a lot of the babies are really calm. They came out of the egg. They weren't deep breathing. They weren't trying to strike. And they're still like that, and they still eat really well. But we have a couple in there that are really shy still. So it's not like if we breed two really nice parents together, we're going to get a whole clutch of really, animals with the temperament that I'm looking for. And it doesn't mean that if we're breeding a clutch of just animals just purely based on looks, that I'm not going to get occasionally an animal that you're looking for. I think on the Expert and Idiot, I'm just trying to remember what his name is. Of course, I'm spacing on it. They've recently brought on a scientist from, of course, I was going to write my notes down and I didn't bring them with me, from a university that was talking about how that they're waiting on finishing up a paper about proving that reptiles can be, temperament can be inheritable in reptiles. So I'm really looking forward to reading that. And seeing if we can improve our processes as well in that. But we do have a pretty rigorous selection process for our heartline animals. They all have to also take frozen thawed. Really. And again,
so if an animal is 100% sibling to another animal but doesn't meet whatever a behavioral test, is it not a heartline animal?
No, I wouldn't consider it one. I wouldn't put it out as a heartline animal. I would.
Do you feel like the word line is appropriate?
Probably not, but it was the best way I came up with it. And
like, what if it's like heart brand, TM, trademark? Like, this is a heart certified, heart fresh, grass fed.
So something I always took from like the Morelia world was the Morelia would always talk, you'd hear a lot of complaining about lines and stuff. What's the difference between, what was an example? They would complain about lines, like what dictates a line. And I thought I think the best example I've heard of it is when it starts looking distinct from a different, say tiger coastals, which are a tri-stripe looking carpet python, where it looks dramatically distinct from a traditional banded coastal carpet python. So even though it derived from the same lineage as a normal banded carpet python at some point, someone's vigorously selectively bred for better and better striping, till at some point it shared no similarities as far as looks go to that original banded carpet python. Like with your heart line, like if you consistently make calmer, more adjustable animals, and I think snakes that are more used to being handled, or it's hard to say docile, but I guess more just willing to deal with humans. I think that could be,
I like to think
especially
of it
with
as
ball
like a higher
python.
stress threshold.
Say what?
I think of it as like a higher stress threshold. Like they can
Yeah.
take more stressors and they take them in stride.
Right.
Is the way I think of
Lisa
it.
says the researcher's name was Adam
Thank you.
C.
Thank you.
He?
That's Adam. That's the guy who does the podcast.
Oh, I thought that was the
yeah. Adam who's 5.
Byline Tigers. Also says Lisa.
Yeah, Dalen.
Yeah, I wonder if you if there would be an easy way. I'm putting this in air quotes. Easy way where you just take corticosteroid tests from the sheds as babies, and the ones that are born not stressed out, and they stay not stressed out no matter the situation. Like empirically, you're like, these ones just are never stressed out. Like if you punt them like across the room, they would be stressed out. But like under normal use cases, they're just not stressed. They're happy. Then you
if I could
prove,
find a way to do that,
I bet
then
you can.
I can. Okay. Well, I will definitely work. I'd be willing to work with somebody who'd be able to help me figure out how to do that. And,
yeah. William
does. I think as long as you have ball pythons that are willing to sit out, display, handle well, compared to someone who just keeps in racks and pumps out ball pythons that hide and only come out at night. I think that alone will speak for your line. If they could tell just from one breeder to your stuff how much well-adjusted your animals are in comparison to theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And we have tried to the whole, nurture versus nature kind of thing. We've tried to get, I have a control clutch. I'm hoping to get more control clutches next year. That, we've been handling them the same. They've had the same, as much as we can possibly make it the same, environment. And the same, basically the same factors as much as we can possibly keep it. And so far, there is still a pretty big difference in the clutches and how the animals are reacting to stress.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a couple of the clutch from the control clutch that we handle just as often as we handle the Heartline animals. And I think I sent you a video of 2 of those animals that I could I can show anybody who wants to know later on if they want. We don't want to do it now, but where again these 2 animals have both been handled the same. They've been both in a similar environment, and they just are both react completely differently to stress. That girl. See how she's still very tense. She's still very defensive. She doesn't strike as often as she used to, so she has shown some improvement. She came out of the egg trying to kill me. I didn't care how big I was. And then this little guy, he's actually sold, but
can't buy him. Anybody? Stay back.
We do have his brother.
Buy the brother. Yeah, I mean there's a clear difference straight out of the egg how wired up they are to fight or not. I'm sure it can be selected for. I just it's convincing people to be like, yeah, I'll pay $50 extra for that. You'd think they would want that, but it's hard because it's not like a striped tiger carpet. No, there's not a clear phenotype difference. You'd have to be advertising.
We do.
Okay. Yeah.
We absolutely do. You see us at St. Louis. My husband got a whole new banner for it. With some of those animals, so it'll be cool.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've seen it with the difference, and if I, to convince ball python people that it's a thing, I've sold what was essentially a normal male. He was a yellow belly Hidji normal male. He went for about $350 at SCRE because 3 little girls fell in love with him because he was just a sweet boy. And I get updated pictures. He's doing great in his gigantic terrarium. His house is better than mine.
That's good. Something that I think people are more familiar with selecting for would be color or pattern. Does anybody want to talk about the historical role that those things had in old ball python times, where people were maybe picking high yellow ball pythons out of a bag of bush babies. Either Joe or Will, maybe.
Oh, so I'll let Joe go because I'll just ramble about stuff.
Well, feel free to jump in if you want. I mean, obviously, I wasn't quite involved in the hand picking from Africa days, but early on, there was definitely an emphasis on a large number of wholesale ball pythons would come in from Africa. They would be mostly slight variations of the same color and pattern, typical of snakes that we associate as a normal phenotype. And every once in a while, there would be one with a more predominant black stripe on the back as opposed to normal spotting, or it would be a more predominant gold stripe, or the overall color would be tend more gold or would tend more dark to like a melanistic phase. And these these variations that made a snake stand out from a larger group of animals were generally the ones that were selected for as special animals and such. And a lot of these were the ones that people would kind of dinker with, hoping to find something heritable. And along the way, that's the same way that we would find more obvious mutations and such. The first pastels, yellow belly, obviously when albino and pied and such came, they stood out like a sore thumb. That's a more extreme example of selection, but there were all these sort of minute genes that people chose out of a lot of large ball pythons, and that sort of formed the basis for these sort of small projects, or if you were lucky, you might have back then you might have composed your entire collection based on always cherry picking animals of that sort. To me, I would say that's essentially the gist of it, unless someone has more to add.
Like I think an infamous one from back in the day was a high contrast albino. That was just them breeding albinos to darker normals and creating a better contrasted looking adult, compared to the lighter, more oranges and reds and less black, and those who cause more of the muted colored albinos compared to the high contrast. And I think wasn't Blade still considered a line bred trait when they bred it into clown and stuff? Was that considered a line? Or was that
in my opinion, Blade was always, in my opinion, just there was always a subset of clowns that were more reduced, and there was a subset of clowns that were less reduced. And over time, it was determined that the ones that were more reduced weren't just intrinsically that way, but it was actually a separate trait that proved to be separate, and that you could breed out of clown. But I think I'm not sure like what, like I don't know if like the first clowns that came in were already, I believe there were multiple clowns that came in around their origin. I'm not sure if one of them was already a Blade clown combo right off the start. That's possible, or Blade may have existed in some normals, and then someone made het clowns and they made Blade clowns. But I believe it wasn't until it was a combo with clown that people ever noticed it at all. And then it took us further time to realize that it was basically unrelated to clown at all. We've just come to sort of associate it that way.
Right. Well, so back in the day too, I remember I would hear people like Ryan would tell me about this. Like, if you weren't one of those guys or girls even that were pumping out large numbers of stuff, you tended to be more selective on what you bred. And back in the day, you didn't have a plethora of different genes. So what you typically did was you took whatever genes were proven and you bred them into similar wild type animals. Like people who bred their Russos, the lighter ball pythons got better looking Russos, or people who would breed their black pastel to their darker ball pythons got better looking black pastels. And I remember that. I've heard that being a thing back in the day too. And, and then every time something got close, there was always something that got in the way of it, right? Like a new fad or a new something that was like, Jessica, you referenced it to me. You told me, they were talking about this on forums back in the day. Well, it seemed like every time, like when people would breed those, single genes into better looking normals, well, then you had the guys who decided to breed like Kevin did with like bumblebees and bumblebellies, and he started actually combining the traits. And then I think it might have just been the price tag people saw, because selectively bred animals typically weren't more expensive. Well, they were more expensive, but they weren't vastly that much more expensive. Not like compared to back in the day when you slapped two incomplete or recessive genes together, that was $10,000 regardless of what it looked like. So there was more incentive to do that. So then you had less people wanting to specifically work on particular traits or looks, and it just became mashing whatever you had together. And every time the industry hit a lull, like kind of like it is now, you would get the few that would decide, I'm going to get back to the basics. What really matters, rather it was selective breeding for for personality or more domesticated animals, or in our cases for looks we like, and I don't know. I think we're getting in that day, with a lot of species too, because this isn't just ball pythons. I've seen this in the blood pythons and carpet pythons in 2013 and 15, when a lot of mutations were coming in, and it got a bunch of people excited, combinations galore from all kinds of different people. And then once you hit that plateau and you made everything you could make, or just combined everything you could, then then there would be a crash, and then people would forget about those species. Those species fell off essentially. And what happens is the select few who kept with those species and decided, get all the trash out of here. I'm going to focus on this particular look, or be known for this particular animal or whatever, and they would just focus on that. Well, now you're starting to see with blood pythons again, because now there's a surgence of new morphs. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to peak, and then once we hit that point where we've made as many combos or a bunch of different combinations, then it's going to dip back down again. And this will happen with all species.
Right. Somebody that really loves a species will want to breed it for temperament, quality.
The thing is, it seems like unless you, I guess it depends on the species, because ball pythons is easier to get washed out, and because there's so many people, unless you keep a strong presence, like. Who's someone you don't hear about who is kind of known for a particular gene? I mean, unless you've been in it long enough to talk to him, he's not really on social media as often as JD, with his Xotics stuff. He was known for his Xotics, Now, I can't say if he was selectively breeding for better and better looking Xotics, but I will say his Xotics did look pretty good, especially when no one cared about TSK at the time, So he was an individual that I could think of in ball pythons. But like I said, if you don't, if you fall to the wayside, it's easy, especially in ball pythons, to just be washed out and forgotten about, and relevancy, I guess, is what it is. But I don't know. I at this point in the game, you just let everyone else burn around you, and you just keep doing what you're gonna do, because I hate to sound like a doom and gloomer, but
that's it.
Fast as the ball python people are going. If you want to burn, burn everyone else around you and just go as fast as humanly possible, get to that finish line. What are you going to do when you get to that finish line? Because I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there's going to be, there's a lot of endless combinations, but there's not going to be a lot of them probably aren't going to look that good. I'd say I'd almost willing to guarantee you half, if not a little bit more, is probably going to be white snakes, too dark snakes, or patternless snakes. Or it's going to be, because you can only add so many genes before you just get a poopy looking animal that just isn't that cool looking. I think, and it's funny because people don't see it. But we're in this, like with the multi-recessive thing, we're doing the same thing we did with incomplete dominance, except we're just doing it with recessives.
Mm-hmm.
It's to add as many recessives into one snake as possible. And you know what you're getting? Snakes that starting to not look that good. Not all of them. There are some that still look good. But there was also some multi-incomplete dominant traits that still looked really good. Mm-hmm. And now I hear now it seems like people are trying to turn it to where it's multi-recessives and multi-incomplete dominance. But again, if you do not think of what's happened in the past, it will happen again there, where you just add so many incomplete dominants and recessives into a snake where it's going to do the same thing. It's going to either be patternless, lack of pattern, or it's just going to be a disabled snake. One of the two, or one of the multitude of different things that could happen to it. So I'm thinking past that. What's happened to other species when they went beyond to the point of no more? They couldn't get any, or there just weren't any available. What did they do? Well, when you pay attention to a lot of that stuff, you notice that it's people that are known and selectively breed for a particular look, and they get known for that particular look. So I don't know. Sorry, I'm just. Yeah, once I get going,
watch out.
This is something that's been on my mind recently, and the more I hear in podcasts, the more I see posts, the more I see this stuff, and I can't help but think of 25 years ago and what happened to the beginning of ball pythons and what's going on now. You see a rhythm that happens where there's ebbs and flows, and you see these trends. And now with shed testing, and I mean, as fast as people will reproduce a ball python, it's just going to happen faster and faster and faster. And selective breeding doesn't really lend towards fast very well. It tends to be a lot, depending on the looks you're trying to do, because people think it's just to make something a little bit brighter. What if I told you you can breed a pastel DG and breed the yellow out of it? Because I have an animal in there that had siblings that were black and yellow, and he was the only one that was muted yellow and black. So if you took that snake, you could selectively breed that yellow away over time and not have to combine all these different traits in it just to make one animal that looks like what you think it should look like, compared to, but again, ball python people are fast and they're quick moving, so they kind of just want that quicker route rather than the long methodical route. And I think too, it's not going to be the next $1 million project. That's something people need to keep in mind. Selective breeding, it's just never been that. I guess that's why it's never really truly picked up in the ball pythons, is because why would you do it just to make an extra, $1,000 on a snake compared to making $20,000 or $50,000 on a new mutation or something? So I think that's why a lot of times selective breeding just never picked up. That, and I guess more people would have to learn more about it, because I think we unfortunately saw how the ball python people reacted with the whole DG situation, and how they lost their flipping mind, and how it essentially crashed the DG market for a little while, because it confused people. And I get it, if you're not used to if you don't know what like line breeding is or polygenetics is, then yeah, it can be intimidating. But I think that's what's going to pull the true hardcore people that are into like that minute, truly making their own look in a snake, compared to the people that are just endlessly just combining random traits, hoping to hit the next lottery or whatever it is.
Is that a post ball python collapse world though?
Yeah, it probably is going to have to, but with as fast as this market is, it is. I've never in 15 years I've been in it seen it move this quick. Like the attention span of the, I hate to make it sound like I'm picking on ball pythons, but it's just so fast to where like something's cool for a week and then it has to be something else, or it seems like that's the case.
Right, before a female can even mature to breed, she's already
I mean,
irrelevant.
it seems quick. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it just seems like people are just. I mean, they wanted it yesterday, and they're just full steam ahead to try to. I call it like burning it to the ground is what it seems like. There's no patience anymore, and I think like if you wanted to make it in the long run, as long as you're not like looking to be the next millionaire, because like I said, it's not going to be the next $1 million project, but you want longevity and to actually stick out and be known for something. I think selective breeding is going to be the course that most people should take.
Mm-hmm. Kate, what were you saying?
I don't want you guys, like, don't get me wrong, like I one of my passion projects and things that I'm kind of excited about is the Heartline, but I also do breed like higher end animals, and I am looking for keeping back when I breed my monarchs or my sunsets or my puzzles, to like keeping the best looking of those offspring and trying to breed them as well. So it's not like the Heartline's just fun because it's something it's a lot more nuanced, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And a little bit, and it's part of the reason why we developed Heartline is because I wanted to make really nice pets for people. But we also have higher end animals that we are looking to make really pretty animals with. And like a lot of our Heartline animals, can still create holdbacks. Like our male for this season for our Heartline animals was a pied het sunset. So even though we're still making babies that are, for temperament, as we are also still trying to breed in some of those more desirable morphs. I don't even know how you put it, but making sure that they're still pretty snakes too.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to Lisa's. Does anybody want to comment on the pastel lines that existed?
There was like Jungle Line, I remember. That was Graziani's line, was known to be really, really pretty.
Citrus.
Lemon.
Yeah, I remember Citrus.
Actually, well, yeah, Citrus. Citrus was Amir Soleimani's line, and my first my first male ball python that I ever got was a Citrus pastel, and in hopes of sort of keeping that line alive for whatever, I recreated that pairing of a normal female, the first one I ever did, to that male a couple of years ago, and raised up the female. And actually today I have hatching Citrus pastel and a pure super Citrus pastel. That I'm like, again, it's just a super pastel, but I'm like kind of excited about it. It's just like sort of that little tick of history, So yeah, there was. I'll let you guys continue, but yeah, there's Citrus pastel, lemon pastel, Graziani. Lemon was Kevin at Nerds.
Yeah.
There was Bell line. The difference with a lot of the pastel lines is they weren't named on the basis of. They weren't simply named on the basis of so and so took a pastel and established this line. They were named because they each originated from a different wild caught snake that made its way into each of those collections and then was bred on from then. So it's a bit of like, it was that like each of those animals came from a distinct mutation that occurred separately of the others. But in time, they've all proven to pretty much be compatible versions of the same mutation. And then the breeder side of the line breeding occurred after that.
A lot of it was marketing too. They just they slapped us sort of pretty, like Kevin's infamous for it. Like after a metal band or cover or something, he would just slap some crazy demonic names to it. And I remember if you go on 10 years ago, you get on his website, you would just see names you've never heard before. And they just ended up, some of them were just different lines of like Yellow Belly or
Bling Yellow Belly, Goblin, Yellow Belly.
Yellow.
They're all essentially the same thing. I think. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of putting a name on something that is essentially the same as another thing. Even if you are lineage breeding a mutation. I do think at the heart, most of these mutations are the same.
Right.
I don't know. You could maybe like name your project or let people know what you're doing, but for genes that are like largely the same, I'm not like a huge fan of naming them all something different.
So I'm with you to a certain extent. I think if you were going to name something, do it like Tri-Stripe or Xanthic did, where it was you put the breeder's name, whoever originated that look.
Right. Well, like it's the
call
same
it pastel,
thing, yeah.
or something, or yellow belly. You didn't just call it something totally different with the ether of different names. So yeah, I'm with you with that though. I'm so tired of. You get so many new ball python people asking, "Is this the same as it?" Or
right.
what? This is different. Especially like my dad. Like for instance, my dad's not necessarily a snake guy. He's been into it as long as I have, but he's just on the outsides of it, and he gets confused by it. You get all these different names for things that are essentially the same. It confuses new people. You know, it just makes it more. It feels like we want to make it more complicated than it really is.
Right, and it's kind
of, or
at
least naming and everything.
Right. It's what you said too, where a lot of times the name came not from merit of establishing your line. It was just because you found the same gene as someone else, but you want to put your own name on it, so it sells 2 times. So you can just resell it as new all over again. So I think it discredits true lineage-based work.
I agree, and that's all. It's hard work too. You make a lineage, to really line breed and to not give it the credit that it's due is sad. I mean, we have a lot of our pastel is from, like I said, from nerds. So we have a lot of like lemon pastel. And I do think it's generally brighter, and I think it tends to whack out the pattern a little bit more than some of the other pastels that I have in my collection. But again,
I would just. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, what were you saying?
I feel personally also just like one distinction to be made here is that, at least to me, when it comes to line breeding, I'm of the belief that a mutated sequence of DNA that creates a mutation that we can put a name to is the same as all the other ones that, prove to be that same mutation. I believe that the mutation that causes pastel is what it is, and that it's not some magical line of other pastel that inherently contains all these other attributes. I believe that like the mutation is what it is, and that the reason one example looks different from the next is not because of something within that mutation, it's because of all the other sort of accessory small genes that create that ball python. All the other genes, excluding the mutation, that make it look different from the same mutation in another animal.
I have a question. There is a gene that is OD that is also called high OD, but it has its own distinct listing on Morph Market as if it's a separate gene, but it's been genetically proven to be the same gene. And the way people talk about it imply that it's like sometimes a different allele of OD, but it's definitely not. They're like, I have one copy of high OD and one copy of OD. Is that just confusing people?
Yeah, I mean, it's very. I just think that is not. I just think we're making a lot of assumptions about high OD. I'm not sure how much of it is real, and I'm not sure how much of it has been proven. I know the story is that Oz said that he had his Orange Dream line, and that suddenly appeared some that looked much better and seemed to be heritable on that level. He says that it appeared from the existing Orange Dream line, but that it's yet genetically distinguishable or whatever. And I guess what you're saying is like, that's sort of one of our only explanations, is that perhaps this isn't quite Orange Dream, but it's an allelic form of Orange Dream that is.
No, that's what people say. Definitely genetically out as OD. It's exactly the same.
Well, I mean, if they dig more into it, I bet they could find kind of like what A and B was in Desert Ghost, were just genes that tagged along with that gene for however many years.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're not going to look for it if we don't know what the base or what the normal, whatever that mutation is.
So you think there's a distinct monogenic mutation that is very chromosomally near OD in high ODs that's traveling with it because it's not sorting independently? Is that what you're saying to me?
Who?
You.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I thought you were talking to Joe. It could be. I don't work with.
Right. I always just thought it was like the polygenic mix around it. 5 genes near it.
I can tell you, even among pastel though too. I mean, pastel and orange dream. I don't work with high OD or anything like that. Just what I considered a pretty line of, or not pretty line, but a pretty looking orange dream. And you get a gamut of different looks. Like I said, I've gotten pastels that, I ain't gonna lie, are so ugly that when it grew up, it almost is. It's just a dark brown, yellowish color compared to some that I have a bumblebee female that's 11 years old, and she's still as bright as she was, almost, well, maybe not quite as bright, because I don't think it'd be virtually outside of like certain genes making it that bright, but it's nearly as bright as it was when it was a hatchling. And it hasn't changed, hasn't got any melanin come in or anything like that. And it's just a plain bumblebee female. So you can selectively get those looks, but you got to isolate it. And that's why, just like what your picture was, it essentially has to be a small gene pool of animals just so you can isolate those looks. It's no different than what you see in locality of all sorts of different species, or typically just isolated populations that have a distinct look that either benefits them or doesn't hurt them, so they continue on with whatever those looks are. So how many
generations do you think?
I think it just depends. I think some can be faster than others. Some, like I think one of the longest selectively bred, like human-made selectively bred projects I've heard was like Nick with carpet pythons anyways, where he did the ivory stuff and bred the yellow out of jungles. That took 30 years, I think he said, or pretty close to 30 years to get like paper white on a jungle instead of yellow. But that involves you keeping a bunch of stuff back, because I think the same thing happens with the typically yellow mutations in ball pythons too, is sometimes they can be born really muted, and then after a couple sheds, they get a layer of yellow melanin that comes in, like a coat of it. And all you're trying to do is breed so they don't gain any sort of yellow coloration.
Right. The great tragedy of our time is the adult DG exanthic ball pythons.
Is it pretty yellow still?
Yes, because they're not selectively breeding out that like 5% yellow that remains.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I also heard the same thing with Pompeii.
Oh, snap.
I won't describe it, but I'll say it wasn't. I don't know.
Right, but that's a project. Somebody likes DG exanthic a lot. You could just select away yellow from DG exanthic adults. That could be your entire.
I need to show you this. I'll have to take pictures of this male. I'm like the opposite of most ball python people. I'll just keep certain projects because I don't let them eat me out of house and home like most people do. So I'll just sit on this like males and females for years till I either think of something I'm going to do with them or potentially have a project I want to do with them.
You don't
this male
dribble them out onto auction for $5 each.
Right. He's really muted yellow too. I don't know. It's impressive.
All right, let's go back to this question. It was 20 minutes ago. Sorry. Why are black-headed pythons still so ornery despite no new wild-caught blood being introduced? Is it just a trait of the species, or maybe they actually haven't been selectively bred? They've just been like people hoping to breed them, period.
I think it's just higher adrenaline and stuff, like with like what they say, like with horse or zebras and stuff. A lot of the African species seem to be harder to domesticate. Like rock pythons never really mellowed out. Sri Lankan pythons have been in captivity just as long as Burmese pythons, and I could tell you, they're horrible. They're no different personality-wise to a wild-caught Sri Lankan python, and these are, I don't know, probably 3 to 4 generations captive bred or so. But I mean, if you're not, I think back in the day, selective breeding was more towards looks rather than personality. So I think that might have played a role in it.
Mm-hmm.
And if mutations, you know, a lot of times lower adrenal gland can cause mutations like colors and pattern mutations. So I think maybe some of that, like with the albino Burmese, you know, they're, I mean, somewhat puppy dog tame. You know, you still get the ornery Burm every once in a while, but in comparison to Indian or Sri Lankan, it's night and day as far as their personalities go. So I think mutations, you know, with some of this stuff, I think sometimes can cause a lot of these more mellow animals.
I've noticed that it's easier for me to find animals that fit my parameters in certain genes. A lot of the ones are some of the genes that have been around for a while that have hit the pet market more, like pieds. I've been able to find a lot more of the animals in pieds. Some bananas are a lot more likely to have those traits, you know, like Mojave, some of the like older traits that may have been in our collections for longer that have been, you know, maybe some people's starter snakes and where like they were bred in a terrarium because they had 2 snakes and they're like, look, I'm going to breed them together. You know,
right. That's like artificial selection, I think. Because pieds used to all be mean. I don't know if y'all remember that. Yeah, they used to all be mean and not breed.
Right.
Female pieds.
I don't even remember them being mean, but I remember the pied retic being, for whatever reason, seemed to be more voracious than most other pied, or not pieds, but retic mutations. You know, and even to this day, you still get pretty ornery retics. And I think how long that mutation's been around for what? Over a decade now, probably 15 years or something. And they're still pretty ornery.
I wonder if there is like you said, like with the fox study where like, you know, lighter colors, floppier ears, shorter or longer tails. I wonder if there is some sort of like correlation to that in reptiles as well that we just haven't done the research on.
Right.
The thing is, there's no like neoteny in snakes. There's no like baby form, like a puppy, because we're selecting for puppy traits when we select.
Exactly. That you definitely. But I'm wondering if there's still color.
I don't know. You sure about that, Jessica? There are some like, if you look at some baby snakes, they have an awful cute look compared to a mature python. So I think there is something to be said about that. I think.
So you think if we select for ball pythons with big eyes relative to their heads on an adult, you would be selecting for neoteny or something else?
I think neoteny. I think because that in the part of domestication is a more
right, because you're like it's like the pathways that control maturity and the pathways that control aggression are related, basically. So if you sort of stunt them as like a puppy brain with a puppy face and puppy tails and puppy behaviors. They don't want to eat your face. Also, it's a cool benefit.
Yeah, that is a nice benefit.
In snakes, that like is normally reversed because the babies are normally much more likely to be defensive, you know, as like a stress response. And so it's like if you breed them to be more like
it's
babies,
hard to like tease out experience. Like a 5-year-old snake has experienced the world and learned. But I'm just like,
I don't know. That's sort of my biggest thing is that like I don't know. I kind of personally feel that like the large majority of my baby snakes generally act about the same as each other. I do like agree with what William was saying that like I think in general we are breeding snakes to not be so fearful, like especially with the balling of ball python. Like I remember like we just did the review on the VPI ball python book, and they said that like ball pythons are great because they're not known to bite, and they almost never bite, and they'll coil into a ball. And I do notice that less and less do these ball pythons seem to like exhibit that behavior at all, and especially as babies, they're also much more prone to bite instead of having a ball defense. And it's like, but I do find that for me personally, I feel like most of them you find some that are like a little more calm or lethargic even and that will translate into feeding and such. And then I find for me like the biggest that like the environment is very influential into the way that snake develops. And I find that no matter how most of my babies start, they all mostly end up the same, which is quite calm and docile and tractable. I also like, you can see I like use clear tubs. They see me all the time. I don't really have like timid snakes. I don't have very many like defensive snakes, especially of the ones of mine that are like multi-generation raised in my care. And I do find, for me, probably the biggest factor in what develops a snake and its personality is not so much like all these like positive behaviors that you can exhibit on it. It's more so the lack of any negative stimulus that you could ever like inflict on it. I find that like a lot of times a timid ball python has been kind of like handled or managed by someone that doesn't know how not to scare the animal or something. I find that like as long as nothing bad ever happens to it, they normally develop into a like quite a calm, nice animal, you know. But you can. That's not to like disagree with that. You could select genetically for a portion of this. I just think I just acknowledge that I think it's hard to distinguish how much is genetic and how much is environmental. And I think environmental plays like a huge factor.
I agree. We have, I think you can see back there, I've got some clear tubs and I've got some opaque tubs. I'm working on trying to figure that out. You know, are we raising, you know, some animals in clear tubs and some animals in opaque tubs and seeing how that affects them as well. I mean, my general goal is, yeah, I'd like to be able to breed for temperament and be able to have that predictability, but also is just to make good pets for people. So, if that ends up not being, you know, breeding for, you know, temperament, it's something we're trying, but we are also working on making sure that, like, again, the clear tubs, I think they're a huge factor. Being able to be exposed to outside stimulus without realizing that they're not going to die. Nobody's going to come in and try and, you know, they're not actively being preyed upon. I think is definitely good for their brain, as far as becoming a good pet. I know that a lot of the, you know, these animals may never see a clear tub again. So some of our higher end animals, it's less important because they know that they're probably going to go to a breeder. And I want to make sure that those animals are also adapted to the life that they might live as they grow up as well. Because I don't want them to be, I don't know, unhappy. It sounds a little bit anthropomorphic, but, you know, preparing the animals for the life that they are destined for. That makes sense?
It is kind of fun seeing like a 80-gram baby, because I've been doing like, I don't know, I've just lost my mind recently, so I'm just like, fuck it, whatever. I've been putting baby ball pythons in 35 vision tubs with one hide, and they will hunt the front of the tub like a baby boa will if you let them. And they're not even in the hide, like hunting from the hide. They're hunting the front of the tub, like waiting for a mouse or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, some of these things are bold as fuck. Like they would do fine. Honestly, they don't need, most baby ball pythons born now, in my opinion, don't even need gray tubs. Like that's maybe snakes are closer to wild caught, but a large percentage now could probably stay in clear tubs. It's fine.
Yeah, the only time I use solid color tubs is animals that are either easily distracted, like baby white lips tend to be like, they're really cued the motion. So if they see a lot of motion going on, they'll forget the rodent and start looking around at what else is going on, and then just forget to ever eat again or eat the mouse sitting in there. So sometimes I use a solid
ADHD.
Color,
that's what you're saying.
Until they get like, okay, this is food. I need to eat this to survive, and get them established. Then it usually doesn't matter after that. But
yeah, that can happen for sure.
All right, can we talk about some of the passive, maybe unintentional forms of selective breeding where people are breeding for like precocious puberty, maybe in ball pythons, where like doesn't matter how big she is, if she can breed at 18 months, that's something we're selecting for because that's the first one to breed in like a morph speed game?
I have a theory on that.
Okay, go for it.
I don't think that's true. The early breeding, because from my understanding, the Barkers, for instance, were breeding a bunch of wild-caught pythons at 18 months to 2 years old. Pythons that people always said have to be 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, and they were breeding some of these pythons really, really young. And then Daniel Natouche, however true it is, he says you can dissect and tell by her ovaries if she's a proven breeder or not. And he dissected a lot of, and this was in scrub pythons, green trees, retics. Trying to think if there's something else. I think water pythons are another one, but it's kind of more of how they grow up is what dictates how early or young they can breed. Like water pythons, if they were born at the silver spoon theory, if they've had an abundance of food and everything's perfect, and they end up breeding at a fairly young age. But Daniel Natouche was saying some of these animals were 18 months old, 2 years old technically when they reproduced. And I was like, huh. And I think though that is a rarity for pocket populations that do get those silver spoon situations. I think it's more, and then in captivity, I've seen like Bob is infamous for doing it with wild, F1s, wild caught retics, where he would pump them up real quick and breed them at a fairly young age. So I don't necessarily think breeding young
is a heritable trait.
Is inheritable like we think it is with pythons.
You think it's a trait, like a trait of the entire clade, that if there was a magical, fortunate mouse breakout somewhere, they could breed at 18 months.
Like animals that live closer to human settlements and stuff, or having just abundance of prey. It's the same thing with it's like the same shit I hear with the voltas. Voltas are, these big ball pythons are just. I remember seeing a video. It was ball pythons in the wild, and they pulled this male 5.5-foot male ball python and then a 6+ foot female. That was right behind him was homes. So there were rodents in that area. And I'm just like, well, these larger prey items or more prey abundance, I think is causing, a lot of these animals to go into breed more at younger ages and stuff. So,
well, size in humans is like the heritability quotient isn't 100%. But it's like whatever, 40%, because environment's super important, like how much food you got, how stressed out you were, whatever. But there's still some heritable portion. Is there a future where people actually want 7-foot ball pythons?
I remember hearing people talking about it, but I go, you already keep them in tiny tubs. Why would you want to build a ball python?
It's like a trade-off, because
I would think you'd want to strive for smaller ball pythons, like pygmy balls or something.
I also wonder, like, if the like heritability of like maturity also is affected by the fact that like it's the recessive game. So if you find a new recessive morph, the real only way to keep reproducing it is to have it be a very small gene pool in the beginning. So if mom for that gene pool was, she reproduced really young, maybe she's passing that on, and then for one gene, and then you start adding all these other genes into it, and it just kind of disappears. I'm wondering if like the fact that most recessives start out with a really small population, like how that might affect the long-term viability of the morph. I mean, I know about outcrossing. How important is outcrossing in a new recessive?
Right. Well, let's talk about that. You could technically selectively breed for genetic diversity, not for inbreeding. You could want maximum heterozygosity for maximum health. You're just like, every time I breed each generation to a wild caught because I don't want stomach cancer in my ball pythons. What about that? Would anybody ever want to do that?
I mean, we're doing it with the Rainbow Project. I'm in a group. Rainbow group for rainbow ball pythons. In it right now, most of the people who are breeding rainbow ball pythons, it's discouraged to breed visual to visual right now
Is it?
Because you're trying,
I didn't know that.
or at least in the group, even at least in the group that I'm involved in,
Sure.
because they're trying to outcross it to other genetics to kind of get it a little bit more genetically diverse. No, you can do it and they'll breed, but increasing the genetic diversity in that particular morph is something that the community is that I'm
Do they?
the community I'm involved in is important.
Would you like to report what may or may not be troubling?
Well, in the very
Homozygotes?
beginning with Rainbow, there was some fertility issues, I think, with the females.
Like not breeding at all, or not breeding
just,
until 7?
They were just like a sub-level fertility. They just weren't great breeders at the beginning. The visual females. There's been a lot of visual females that are on eggs. I've seen them, so they can breed, but it's been important to like outcross them to try and make sure that we increase the genetic diversity so that we can continue to make sure that they continue to breed more healthily. That works.
Yeah, that's my theory. What's wrong with female tri-stripes?
Yeah, I think it's, and so it's something that at least like that, like the rainbow community that I'm involved with has made a point to be like, right now in the development of that particular gene, it's important to get in more genetic diversity.
Right, and it doesn't have to be that hard either. Like you can still be selectively breeding, but not necessarily be inbreeding every time. Like you pick the perfect outcross male from this guy that you know is het, so it has to be like 5 cousins away, but it's not a sibling pair. That's why I made the thumbnail like this, because I think there's a trap here in ball python land where nobody can afford to buy anything. So we're like, well, I'll just bring them back together again. You don't always have to make a ladder to make a good selective breeding program. You can go out into the market and be like, damn, that one's nice right there. It's not related to my group at all, but it fits in nice. And I think this outcross will
some specific trading within the rainbow community where like if you've got a hat rainbow that somebody else might want that it's in their collection starting to get a little bit ladder like you bringing your like to basically
I'm
trading.
So sorry.
So rather than like making it so that like you may have to buy another animal and be like, I've got genetic diversity over here, you've got genetic diversity over here, let's
swap them.
Let's swap.
I was gonna do the entire Targaryen lineage, but replace all their faces with ball python faces.
That would be awesome.
But then I was like, I don't have time.
Opportunity missed.
I agree with you, particularly with ball pythons. When you're dealing with mutations, I think the thing that is lacked to be told to new people is what are mutations or their genetic defects. A lot of them are animals that tend to have some sort of flaws to them. So it's important to get that genetic diversity. I have in my room, I have 4 wild caught het for absolutely nothing ball pythons, just for when I need to. I can inject truly fresh, as fresh as you can get without literally going out there and hand picking your own ball pythons, about as good as you can get.
Yeah, Dr. Booth has talked about it. He's like, most ball pythons are already inbred AF. So he said
it's amazing that they're still able to reproduce.
Right.
Really?
But I wonder, I think that might have to do with how low they are on a trophic level, because it makes more sense when an animal's lower on the food chain that you need to breed as quick as possible, regardless if it's in the same vicinity or not. Same thing with Antaresia and a lot of these smaller, just animals in general, like colubrids, like your kings, your milks,
but we're in charge of them, tolerable. So we could bring a sexy new male into the building that we know fits the breeding program, but is also not related at all.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are like, well, I bought this project from my friend. Yeah. And then they buy like a new male for the project, but all those animals source back to like Justin Kabilka.
Yeah.
And you're like,
and then when you take all those animals, they source back to Brian, Kevin.
Right. You need animals that are fitting your projects that aren't just second cousins, maybe fifth cousins. We've seen Alabama, we've seen West Virginia. We know what can happen.
Well, back in the day, I wouldn't say, when morphs were new, it was more advantageous to breed those animals to a bunch of wild caught females. So that was probably the bulk of our genetic diversity Well, then when it became more combo stacking, well, then why do we need all these wild-caught females anymore? And then we pushed them all the way to the pet ether, and we just kept that limited gene pool for the last 20 plus years whenever the combination train really picked up. And people
but
need
now I
less
think
wild types.
There's probably needs to be room in people's hearts for the idea of being like, okay, I've inbred this 2 ladders rungs in a row. It's time to outcross to a wild-caught female. Get some fresh heads.
And you can get pretty wild-caught females too. I got some like 4 females, and they're all like very different. Like one female I can tell would work really well in the puzzle because of her pattern. And then I got this really nasty female that would probably work really well with tri-stripe. You know, just to make them more voracious and horrible.
I mean, the other thing is, okay, so about breeding for temperament, I'm going to go back to it just briefly. You know, everybody kind of admits that there are certain morphs that eat better, or you know, are more feisty, or more, you know, they're or the opposite. They don't eat as well, or they're not, you know, they're harder to raise up. So I just think that that's just a thought that, you know, if an animal can be more if a specific gene can be more food motivated and more feisty, then there should be, in my opinion, the ability to go the opposite direction as well. Not
and a lot of times I like nicer baby ball pythons because they're more likely to accept frozen thawed early because they're not busy pissed off that you're looming over them.
Yeah.
If they're really people aggressive, they'll be like, I see you there. I'm not going to eat that. So like, it's better feeders to me on frozen thawed are less brain damaged ones in general. Okay. Yeah. Right. We do not remove deleterious alleles. And so we compound them when we inbreed. Because if all these snakes were on an island and all the deleterious alleles were already removed from it in inbreeding, we could probably inbreed as a ladder forever. But Africa's big. There are some deleterious alleles in ball pythons. So like, I don't know.
The problem is, I remember back in the day, I mean, you probably know this with boas. I know carpets, ball pythons. A lot of species were picked, you know, the prettiest one, which a lot of times ended up being the weakest, the one that didn't thrive, the one that you literally force fed up to the point of breeding. I don't know if you heard of too many of those before, but yeah, people would force feed a male all the way up to a breedable size and then put them in. And that was until he reproduced. And then, I don't know, they probably just let it coast away till they, I don't know, probably something dark.
Right. Part of selective breeding is excluding animals also. Like, you can pick the ones that are good, pick the colors that are good, pattern, whatever, but you have to like be like really intentional about being like, this is not a breedable animal. It has no eyes. Its butthole is gone.
Face structures too. I see a lot of, so I'm seeing a lot of ball python, not a lot, let me rephrase this. I've seen some really big breeders with females that you can tell are starting getting inbreeding depression, where they have shorter snouts. What's like a shorter neck almost, where the neck's real thick, almost like it's vertebrae shortened.
Right, I just thought they were just like critically obese, so the fat was filling up their whole body.
I've seen lean males with just like real thick, like almost like they didn't have necks, but their bodies weren't thick. What's that guy, the famous guy with the no neck? What's his name? You guys know what I'm talking about? TLC.
I think that's no neck. I'm already really horrible at names.
Yeah, I can't remember, but if anyone even knows who it is, you know, that's what I'm trying to explain. I've seen ball pythons they just looked off. Like, you looked at their neck, I don't know if their vertebrae in their neck was shortened or something, but I mean, I've seen some tail signs of inbreeding depression in some females and males and ball pythons.
I like my animals to have a nice big chunky head.
Big head.
I don't know. Yeah, I like them. I like to do that. You know.
Yeah, and there's like a problem of like teasing out like what was a developmental effect because there was a heat spike in the incubator, and so they have this weird look. Like I don't care what anybody says. Super GHIs, there's like a tendency towards narrow heads. Please fight me at any time. I'll take it because it's not all the time though. So I don't know if it's a super GHI problem, a developmental problem, or just those
I've
lines or something.
noticed
I don't know.
I've noticed that like head structure in a lot of the like hyper-melanistic animals seems to be like they seem more prone to things like that, like bug eyes, narrow head, short head. It's true where like I've seen examples where I do believe that like I think head structure is really important to me. I think it's something that a lot of people like don't have an eye for. I think it like takes a certain amount of experience to like be conscious of what's going on there. But
Mhm.
and I've seen multiple examples where there are cases where I'm like, this head structure is not perfect, and I think it may be perhaps due to inbreeding. And then there's some times where I'm like, then I think sometimes it could be that certain morphs are predisposed to improper head structure. And then in a third case, I think that sometimes it's completely random. Like
Mhm.
you have a snake that bred to another that you've made 200 of them and they're all perfect, and then you outcross it and it makes something totally messed up. And it's like, I think a lot of times it's maybe the first two, and then sometimes it's the third, and sometimes
Right.
it's like a weird balance of understanding exactly what actually happened there, you know.
Yeah,
But
I just think for
I
the
think
most
head
part, if
structure
you're
is
gonna
really
pick
important.
your breeder, it should like be the package deal if you can get away with it.
So
Yeah, I wouldn't
I've noticed
proliferate
that,
the miss.
and you can correct me if this is something that I may just be seeing things. But I've noticed that like when a female matures, sometimes she'll like her head and her body structure will change
Yeah.
slightly.
Mhm.
So like as something I look for as my girls are growing up is just like that, like you look like a grown up, like head structure. If
Mhm.
that makes any sense, like
It's
because
mom bod.
yeah, like a nice mom bod, exactly. Yeah. Uh, she gets a little nice thick. You know, her head kind of, you know, just
Mhm.
separates from her neck. And I'm wondering because a lot of when you're getting like a new gene or you know you're picking out your breeders or your future breeders, we're doing it as babies. Most people are buying a baby of that animal. So and you don't know, especially with ball pythons, they change their look changes dramatically from baby to adult. So if you're always picking just the youngest, you know, baby for the latest morph,
Right.
how
Well,
can
that's
you
why
be?
like the other species hobbies, the breeder has a website. They're like, here's my adult breeding group of this.
And
So
that's
you're
why
supposed
like
to
with
be
dogs
able
they
to
have it
tell
too.
based on like
And a lot of times they keep groups of animals back for a long period of time, and you know that
Mhm.
they get them all the way up to either subadult to adult size before they select what groups they want to keep out of it. So they'll keep them longer than most people are willing to, you know.
Yeah. Well, ball by the people would have to be ready to be like interested in their animals for more than 2 years.
Well, that, like I said, I think that what I hearkened
You
on
know what I
earlier
mean?
is it's just I I think I think people are complaining about the market now. I think it's going to get worse. I have a suspicion. I
Sure.
hope not, but I think it's going to get a bit worse. And I think that's what's really going to wean out the people who like really can find like either just like the snakes because they like the snakes, people who like snakes but also enjoy breeding it, but can find more purpose than just endlessly making nonsensical pairings just because they think it's a new hot thing. Because what's relevant now, you know, won't be relevant tomorrow. And I don't know, like the more I get, like when I hear people say the term like we're advancing, I go, what are we advancing in? Like it's just subjective. It's like we're advancing in this because you think it's cool. I go, yeah. I think there were some more 10, 15 years ago that are still look cool. And,
Yeah.
you know, they look just as cool as the snakes we have now. It's just either because it's because they're gonna be hard to make, like Pompeii, stuff like that, where it's incomplete dominance with recessives, compared to like multi recessives. Once you've gotten the double, triple visual, you can essentially start cranking them out. There are big breeders working on doing that now. So you best believe your double, triple, however many recessives you want to add into it. Once they've get made once, and those big breeders get a hold of them, you best believe they're going to be no different than a pie, no different than, albinos or whatever those traits are. So I think some people truly need to look at something, is this actually cool to me? Because I think there's this Nick and Ryan quote I love, is it cool because it's expensive or expensive because it's cool? And I think
every ball python person probably needs to ask themselves that every single day.
There's some stuff, man. I have to tell. I hate the dog on this particular gene because I work with Sunset. But when I saw the Sunset clown pie,
Steven was here, so be gentle.
No, it's not him. It's other people that made it. But and then they had the gall to say, "Man, this thing is gorgeous." I go, I think pinstripe pies look better. Sorry. I hate the shit on your parade, but I personally think they look better. But
can I say
here's
something?
my caveat, because I work with Sunset. The people who shit on Sunset are the people with lack of creativity. Some of them. And I'll say this because I'm not saying you can make a red snake, because red in python seems to be really hard to keep. A lot of neonate pythons will stay red like a Sunset, but then they mature into either browns, oranges, tans, stuff like that. But I think you can selectively breed Sunsets with better contrast, better colors, whatever you want.
Yeah, just not brown would be a pretty good start.
Just not brown. Yeah,
I'd go with that.
Here's another thing too that kind of irritates. Well, it's kind of silly, but people right now are so against the Sunset into dark genes, but I don't get why you wouldn't just take those dark genes and put it into your ultramel, albinos, your lavenders, whatever albinism trait you like. Because here's the harsh reality: that Sunset ultramel, that Sunset lavender isn't going to look that pretty when it gets older, unless you just like sherbet orange or just a patternless orange-ish snake. But if you add those dark genes into it, well, then you're keeping a lot more of that contrast. This is just if you're breeding a breed.
That's why I'm working on making Sunset monarchs.
Yep, I think that could be interesting. See, monarch's an interesting one too. Monarch and ultramale, because those are two traits that are different, but yet easy to play, like make interactive mutations that make them look similar. Like if you add a lot of dark into ultramel, you get very monarch-looking animals. If you add a lot of light into the monarch, you get a lot of ultramel-looking animals. So I think you really have to like truly subjectively look at the mutations you're wanting to add to it and think about what you're doing. Even if, like I said, even if you're just doing the endless combination stacking, like some people throw shit at the wall, and at some point the wall is just going to be brown. Because you're just throwing too much shit at it, and it's just not sticking the way they were wanting.
It's really funny to me that people are like, "Oh, I like the dark genes in ultramel," and I'm like, "So you like monarch?"
Yeah.
But because like you look at some of those dark genes in ultramel, and I'm like, that looks like what my single gene looks like.
That's true, but like the base ultramel color is different than a monarch base color. So like,
I agree.
If you wanted to do ultramel dark gene and have maybe an oranger base or something, like it would just be like that would be a taste choice. But you could also, because sometimes dark gene plus monarch makes it look like a normal. It's so dark again. It's like normal coded.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what you want to do, what your feelings are.
Yeah.
I just want everybody to know that in corn snakes, which are basically what ball pythons will be eventually here anyway, sooner or later, the things that are still popular now are like 1 recessive, maybe 2, plus heavy selective breeding. There's no quintuples or like whatever pink. Nobody cares. But like the coolest ones, the ones that people still want to buy and work with and work on, selective breeding, 1 recessive, selective breeding, 2 recessives. That is where corn snakes are now.
I mean, think about it. If you keep adding more recessives, you're not going to get some golden snake. You're probably just going to get a patternless brown or a white snake, depending on what you're adding to it. And I hate to be this, because I know people are pushing the multi-recessives and the incomplete dominance, but I know what the route people are going to want to do, because it's just the ball python mentality is just add a bunch of genes to it. And it's good. So you got to get that out of your mind, because I mean, you're just going to run into the same problem you did before, except you keep going faster.
And you make a bunch of byproducts that absolutely nobody wants.
Yeah.
Which is like hundreds of 66%ers that look like normals.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of what shed testing has helped do. And you just kind of get.
I don't think it helped. I think it made everything worse. Sorry.
Hot take.
I think it made people do pairings they wouldn't have normally done, which makes even more byproduct.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe, but also I think it also means that they're not keeping back the animals that they don't want. So those animals aren't necessarily going into the gene pool. They might be going to a pet home or.
Right, but that just floods wholesalers with stuff that people now know they want instead of them valuing it and keeping it and holding it back and then not wanting it later. So it just means everything's like even more depressed. That's why we're not sponsored by anybody.
I mean,
I'm just saying.
But you're also not keeping back hundreds of pos hets and breeding those pos hets and not getting what you want.
I feel like people weren't doing that anyway. They're just like, hey, I'm gonna your pos hets have value, so you'll just sell some. You'll like squint at them, look for het markers that don't exist, and you'll keep a couple for fun. It was more like organic and natural. It's just my opinion, though. Partho babies are not viable, not because Parthos aren't viable, but because they're so homozygous that it brings up all the deleterious alleles. That's what.
He compared it to super dwarfs, but then this is my counter argument: is I don't think Partho's ever been witnessed in an island boa yet. Are we sure there's been true Partho in the Jampiensis clade, the island? Because once you breed it into the mainland stuff, you're getting amalgamations of all sorts of different.
Do you think there's no parthenogenesis in island snake species? Is that what you're implying?
Well, I don't think Warren has seen it yet. Has he?
I know, but Warren's not omniscient. He's not God.
Well, who knows? It seems
he could
less
be.
likely.
You're right.
It seems less likely, though. I don't know.
Well, in turkeys, it's a specific gene. One gene gives you the ability to be a parthenogenic turkey. So if that island was populated only by snakes that drifted on a vegetation mat that did not have that gene, it will not be there. But it is like a plesiomorphy that's like.
So do you think there's a gene associated with Partho?
I've heard of that before.
Yeah, I've heard.
In turkeys, there is. I don't know if there is in snakes, but turkeys.
It's a reptile. It could be close. Maybe. No, I mean you're definitely because Partho doesn't hurt the reproductive female. So if it doesn't hurt, then it doesn't. It's not gonna decimate it. Then I guess it will keep persisting on.
Right. So the island snakes could have Partho, or they could not have Partho. But you would have to just see.
But so you're wondering if maybe if a wild type out in the middle of Africa did a Partho. Because she's more genetically diverse, maybe her Partho clutch would be more viable as well.
Perhaps. Or the island ones doesn't matter because they're all basically clones of each other anyway at this point. It'd be hard to tell. Warren has refused to accept sheds from proven Partho breeders. I think it's just because he's tired of it. You mean for
retics? I think he's talking about the retic stuff. I'm just curious. I didn't know if there's actually been Partho, because sometimes I wonder, are they just considering it Partho because of shitty clutch size, poor fertility? Because I got a hunch that I think it has more to do with the way the super dwarf community gets their snakes way too fat than it does, which in return can affect reproductive viability if they have a bunch of fat sitting over their ovaries or on the ovaries, and could potentially hinder follicular development, and in the males too. So I don't know, are they just assuming because it was a crappy clutch they got mostly females, or I don't know. I think there's too many what ifs, because super dwarf, like I said, they treat them too much like mainland retics when I don't think they should be treated like mainland retics. Sorry, this is just my opinion. I don't know. Just me rambling. I'm just thinking out loud.
I don't know.
Who's done selective breeding pretty well, I think, is from what I can understand, is the hognose community. They've done a lot of selective breeding for color and vibrancy.
I think they're doing fine. I just like they have problems with like inbreeding depression too.
Well,
like,
yeah.
So I don't know. That's part of like the balancing act. Like you always like I have snakes now that exist to be the outcross for a future good snake, but I don't want to breed them even. But they have the right mix of phenotype. This is stupid. That like if I get this thing, but I need to like brighten up the base, they're far enough away, like from somebody else, but not related to this line, that they're the outcross. But I can't sell them, so like it's a lot of work to not make them all hillbillies. It's
It's better if you can start with like a decent outcross population to begin with, but still, compared to just a pair of animals or something like that. If you can have like a small founding group.
You gotta get a crack team from all different breeders, different looks. Let them breed out, see what it looks like, and then because sometimes, oh god, so sometimes when stuff is really inbred, it looks correct, but it's not like a sticky correct. Like the polygenics in it are recessive to something else. So the second you breed it to anybody who's not at least a first cousin, the trait falls apart, right?
Yeah.
You're just like, damn.
It's kind of like the problem with like when people do breed like a certain line they have that has a distinct look, and then they breed it to an unrelated line that kind of has a similar look, and they breed them together, thinking
and they like wild type out.
Has nothing, nothing looks the same.
Like that can be fine, but that's something you have to know about. But to me, what would be better would be like a healthy, diverse group of alleles that are all together and in different animals of different ages. That at any time you're just like, I need this phenotype, and somebody wants to buy it. You're like, I got you. And I can actually make a pair that have this phenotype. And you could breed that too if you want. Or you can outcross it and you'll still get like a good mix of phenotypes because it's homozygous enough for the looks. It's complicated.
All right, going back to like the high OD stuff. So because like that's the only I have a couple of hog noses. I don't have a ton. None of them are related. So that's kind of my daughter's project. She has an extreme red superconda that's absolutely gorgeous. Superconda albino. But that's why I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. And I've seen like the super red ones and the ruby red or whatever, and I thought that was really cool. But like the high OD, so if you breed a high OD to a regular OD, what happens? We know?
You get super ODs.
Yeah, but say you breed a super OD and a super high OD. Do you get some high OD? Do you get some regular OD? Do you get some medium OD?
Well, the theory is that it works. Like, this is what I'm saying is I don't necessarily believe that any of this has really been like scientifically proven without a doubt. I just think the theory is that high OD acts as an allelic form. Oz had postulated that high OD OD mutated genetically into high OD, and that it's a stuck mutation that apparated out of OD, but yet they're compatible, like as if they're allelic mutations. I mean, I have an animal that is a super orange dream that appears to be half high OD and half OD, and when I breed him, generally without a doubt, like half of them are OD, but they're not that nice, and then half of them are OD with a much deeper orange. I've like gone on to breed the separate ones too, and sometimes it seems like it holds up, but like to me, I'm not really sure like how much of that really makes sense. I also think that it could even be just as simple as like levels of expression. Like it could be epigenetic, where like there's just the high OD ones are experiencing greater expression due to any form, which could be due to a genetic reasoning. It could be environmental epigenetic stimulus or whatever, but I don't know if any of this is proven, but the idea is that it's like essentially an allelic form.
I feel like since he had that first post, he's definitely been like, whoopsie daisy, they test exactly the same genetically. So like unless there's a carrier gene
I've heard that some people have speculated that like Scrambler is what does it, but I have no idea. That's just
Um,
rumors. Um,
I don't know
Don't
about that. I mean,
let us
mine is
talk
not
about
really a
scramble.
scrambler. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's what I was saying before. Like, I feel like the morph is a morph, and then there's like a number of other genes that make a ball python that we don't really like focus on that influences color and pattern as well and expression of genes and such. And so, like, I feel like there's a million reasons why one snake in a clutch could be a little more orange than another that like seems to be the same. It might have some other like small carrier gene that we're never going to put a name on, you know, like I think there's a million reasons why a snake could be a little more colorful than another one. And I don't know if it's as simple as like claiming it's an allelic mutation or something like that. But
well, okay, so Chris Hernan has two different lines of what I think he calls high OD, but he has got two different lines of OD, uh, and then like normal OD. But he's got like what he called like a bright and clean line and like a dark line, I think it's or deep orange, deep orange. Um, and going to his table, you see beautiful animals, whether it's scrambler or whatever. But he does have those distinct lines. But he's said, or at least I believe he said that like he specifically grabbed the OD that he liked that was really bright and clean, and he bred that again to another one that was bright and clean, and that he's been trying to breed that consistently. And again with like a deep orange with a more orangey color and picking basically the best of the litter, pick the pick of the litter or the pick of the clutch, and keeping back those animals and breeding them together. So that would be a form of like line breeding, or selective breeding. And whatever he's done with it, those animals are neon.
Isn't he like worried? He has not worried, but he like now thinks he has Scrambler.
I think he definitely thinks he has Scrambler. I think that he probably, if regardless of your feeling on it, he has something. And whatever he has is bright orange. Whether that's through line breeding or through from Scrambler or a combination of both. I mean, we've all seen an animal that you could genetically test for a gene, and it comes up and it's the gene, and you just look at it and you go, oh, okay. And then you look at another example of the gene and you're like, yeah, that's stunning. Is it because the high expression, low expression is that if you breed high expression to high expression, it's in some genes it seems to be proving that you get more high expression, better in than out, or quality in, quality out kind of situation.
I literally hate that phrase, but okay.
I figured you would.
Because typically their version of quality is just expensive. It doesn't actually have anything to do with
right.
I have one of the others in my clutch that I have. She's a black pastel hurricane, and she's huge and she's beautiful and she's gorgeous, and I bred her because I love what she's doing with black pastel and hurricane. That's all she is, just black pastel and hurricane, and I want 100 of her because she's just gorgeous. But her babies are mean.
All right, let's go back to this. The idea that nature would develop a non-viable method of reproduction is crazy, which is talking about parthenogenesis. And no, you're correct. Many people overfeed retics, both mainland and insular. I think it's there as like a last worst case scenario. One female is left. She's living in a field somewhere. No male has come to visit her in 5 years. She will parthenogen daughters just in case a male shows up later.
Yeah,
comes around
because those females can still be reproducible.
Yes, they do have a harder time, but it's like better than nothing and dying.
Yeah, like I think you said, it's a last ditch effort. I don't think they know I think that's still theory or something. And then you got like angiogenesis, which is really that one. I don't know. That seems like a mutation of partho or something like that, where you'd have just animal that just doesn't even thrive at that point.
You ever seen like null allele babies?
Trying to think. I'm sure I have.
Like I had a clutch where like it was the dad. They weren't parthenogens, but on the sons, they were doubles of the mom.
Okay.
And I was like, this is fucked. They were all like pretzeled, so bye. But only sons were homozygotes of the mom, not daughters.
Interesting.
I was like,
Right.
King Snake.
Right.
Hello, sir.
I mean, nature can come up with non-viable methods of reproduction that, as long as it doesn't make the that doesn't make the female non-viable for a future clutch. It just means that that particular round of reproduction just wasn't viable, but she can go on to make more babies, so that doesn't make it lethal.
Yeah,
Well,
and it could have been more important in the past. Like they had a fossorial phase; they were all parthenogenic. They evolved out of that. They're like, whoopsie, let's get a Y chromosome back up in here. And so they go back to having males again. Because you can lose males and gain them because they're, sorry, man, you're not technically necessary. So if you re-evolve a Y chromosome again, you might keep the parthenogen gene, but it's actually not that helpful. But it's just like a relic.
Doesn't help, but doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So back to that orange dream situation. You know what it kind of reminds me of when I hear you guys talk about this? It reminds me of the hypobredli in the Morelia and the carpets and stuff. Nick would say it's one main gene that carries the mutation, but then it has 2 or 3 other genes that gives you that look that you like in hypo. I kind of wonder if you're seeing the same thing with like orange dream. There's a gene that just gives it that orange palette, but then there are these other genes that code for whether it's higher expression, cleaner blacks, better contrast, or cleaner oranges, or a combination of both or something.
Right. That's sort of what I've been alluding to with my beliefs, how it's like there's one gene, which is the one we associate, but then there's all these accessory genes that come sort of from the lineage into all of, evolution of this trait before we did anything. I know also, though, I was talking to Jordan Parrott recently about his trips to Australia and how he found that, again, I don't want to be misquoting or anything, but I believe he had assumed that, in fact, like the difference between, or he had found that the hypobrettles was sort of like a locality form where, like, in their range, it was the most common form. And
I was wondering, I didn't know if that was more UV related, because I know when I went to Indonesia, we found this colubrid, and when we found it outside, it was vibrant reds, some aqua colors, and a few other colors, but it was really vibrant. Well, we took that animal indoors so we could take pictures, because this was late at night. We took it indoors so we can get pictures of it later. When we brought it indoors overnight, this thing turned like a whole different shade. I mean, it was like almost brown. I mean, it was just from one night, it changed its color. I can't remember the colubrid off the top of my head. We didn't even know if it was venomous at the time. So we were just like, all right, everyone, be careful touching it.
It could even be like a more permanent phase in relation to like the amount of UV present in the different respective environments,
Right.
Kind of like how we see with bolins. I believe that's like why they're pitch black, because it's designed to absorb the faint amount of sunlight that they get,
Right.
Or to better absorb it while they're at those high elevations. But I don't really know, but it does speak sort of to the fact that maybe there is more going on than just like a simple, this is one gene and this.
Well, I remember you saw it in a lot of genes, like what Blackhead had, like the redhead, red gene or whatever carried along with it. Lesser had the platinum. I think.
Cypress
Didn't
and
honey come in with the cypress? I don't know if it was the original cypress.
I know it was related somehow. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, I remember.
But they can be separatable.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if Ozzy has separated high from
he
IOD.
claims that
you know what I mean? Like the high part.
That's why he says it's an allelic mutation. It's a new singular mutation. This is why I'm saying I don't necessarily like believe that that's been proven. I'm not saying that I don't think it's possible. It may even be the most probable, but I just don't think any of us really knows for sure. And it could be like a multi-gene,
Complex.
positive expression relationship, or it could be an allelic trait where, like you're saying, the thing that makes it
But
high
I feel like they
intensity is
tested
not
all like a
separate.
bunch of them, and they all came back OD. So it has to
I
be a
know,
separate gene,
but
not
right,
an allelic gene.
well, okay, yeah.
Like an addendum gene.
I see what you're saying. Where if they tested to all be the same, then it's not an allelic, because even an
Right.
allelic trait would not test to be the same.
No.
However, Ozzy and most people have demonstrated by this theory that whatever makes it high intensity is not separatable. It is permanently bound to this new form. So that's what I mean. It's so contradictory.
That's what I think. Like
almost
it's
wonder
like
if
a
it exists
gene
at all.
near OD, but it's so close to the chromosome it doesn't sort independently. It is distinct, but it doesn't
I
sort
found that,
independently.
like,
It has to
based
go
on
with
my
it.
readings, that it does seem to. Well,
We would consider it linked.
yeah, no, I see what you're
Right,
saying. I
link.
guess
Like
so.
they're just close together on the chromosome. So when they do
Yeah.
crossover events, they go together 99.99% of the time.
Right.
If they didn't go together, you get an OD, right? Like the,
Yeah.
I mean, it's you
That's my
see
word.
I would say you saw with the DG where they said was it a certain percentage of the time A would travel with C or B was like a secondary. There was like I remember they were saying there was one was a higher probability to be
right. They
found
just
with it than the
identified
other
genes
one.
that were close to the real.
And even if you
Deterministic.
isolated that gene, like first off, I hate to piss on ball python's parade, but they don't really do the best at proving much out. It's just the bare minimum because we don't want to ever breed these to wild type animals to get a general understanding of what they're getting. It's let's breed this to the most genes I possibly can to make this more confusing on myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the problem is I'm sure you could, because like I have an analysis with carpet pythons was there was the ocelot gene, and the ocelot gene was tagged along with the jag, where you got these ocelot-like patterns. Well, for years they were trying to isolate it, and they couldn't get it for the life of them. Then the last few years, suddenly people start popping out these ocelot-looking animals that weren't related, or well, I'm sure they to an extent they were related, but didn't have the JAG gene that originally was considered a part of that particular gene. So I think, I don't know. I think a lot of it, you probably could isolate it, but is it worth your while doing? I don't know.
Yeah. Here he's like, even if you did separate, maybe it doesn't do anything visually without OD. It needs OD to be expressive, sort of like ringer. Like red gene you can see by itself, in my opinion. It's just not that exciting.
Right.
Whatever. Clown and cryptic is different because clown and cryptic are empirically occupying the same locus. So they are allelic. This is a different situation. Okay. It needs a specific gene to react. This is why I think I don't know about Scrambler, but a lot of times it's like the Scrambler is Scrambler, OD, YB.
Yeah.
Calico.
We never just see
looks
it,
great.
obviously.
Right, but like the base Scrambler, that could be Scrambler, but then I'm like, kind of looks like Gene X and maybe Extreme Gene and maybe like some other sort of pattern draggy genes that are kind of boring. You could probably miss it if it was in a Mojave or something. So is that Scrambler or is it more than that? I don't know.
Or is it going to be one of those things where we find out that all of those things are the same thing?
Yay!
Who knows? You know,
Sorry.
I'm not saying that they are. I'm not saying that I think they are. I don't know enough about any of them to make that thing, but like
they probably are, so that's fine.
The
other thing,
but I think this is something that like Phenom has really talked about wanting to dig deeper into reptiles. Is when they were talking about making it, giving you more of like a ancestry.com kind of situation, is from what I understand with your reptiles.
but from me coming from, I mean, you know dogs. I think, God forbid, a not-for-profit ball python breeding club should exist that should keep the breeder books for ball pythons, not
Agreed.
a for-profit company, even if they have the best intentions, you would want that to be like publicly available, verifiable, independent storage of the records. That's all.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that.
Do you think we need a way to permanently identify ball pythons to have that? Like, I don't know if anybody saw it, but Justin was talking about using photo recognition on a ball python's head to determine the unique scale pattern, like a fingerprint, and then have the ability to take a picture of a ball python at a show, beep, boop, beep, get the like clutch, like have it linked to clutch, for example. Then the clutch would generate like what that snake is, no matter what that person said it was, based on the clutch records. Would that be enough for people?
Are our cameras like that good yet to get the
people's shaky ass hands?
It would be like your fingerprint. I mean, people to like basically like fingerprint identify. You can take that get the top of the head all nice and like cover that in ink and just.
Well, like I taught a piece of software to identify turtle plastrons.
Okay.
It's not that hard, right? Like.
But are they doing this for morphs, like to identify a morph, or just
just to be like this animal is this? So independent of morph, the scalation is always unique to the ball python because they don't have like structured scales. So that would be like your identifier that is what it is. It matches its shed testing records or whatever. Because only the original breeder took a picture of it when it was a baby. Beep.
Right.
Yeah,
and
let's rely on you like reliably, reporting this proper shed test and only using shed test and not someone says it's this and then like it's complicated. It's not impossible.
Because like right now you have if I shed test snake A and I could technically sell you snake B and be like, oh look, it's shed tested.
Right, but we could have done that all along. Always.
I mean, I'm glad that most people don't do that, and nor should you ever do that. Nor would I, but it is possible. So what he's trying to say is, I guess, if you attach like the snake fingerprint to the shed testing, then you've got it.
Well, like if we had a registry, because right now we have like 2 separate sets of people who are kind of vying to, well, maybe 3, 4, I don't know, to be the registry of like keeping track of lineage in all species for us, but they're all paid services.
So it's like the AKC or like the OFA or.
Yeah.
Right. I want an AKC.
I want an AKC too.
Yeah.
Let's make one.
Okay.
All right. We'll work on it.
Sure. I just spit off more than I can chew, clearly. Because there was an AKC for corn snakes. Let's all remember.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
They were underfunded and under-supported, so it just stopped happening. But there are still corn snakes alive today that have like their corn snake registry numbers still.
But if the ball python market dips down much more, will it? Is it going to be worthwhile trying to do that?
I think it's always worthwhile keeping track of animals, even if they're not expensive, because it means you like the animals. Because lots of animals get turned into like chili meat or taco meat, but somebody was keeping track of like that because they just like meat bunnies. Just like meat bunnies. They want to register their meat bunnies.
I mean, they have meat bunny shows.
Yes, we can have like the meat bunnies aren't expensive. So you can still care about breeding meat bunnies. So we could probably still care about ball pythons 20 years from now, even if all ball pythons are whatever 500 and less, because we're just like ball pythons.
Right. Well, hang on. All right. Can I split off into a different segment that I'd like to? It's still about our selective breeding, but now it's on how I think it. I'm for it for the most part, but then there's some parts I'm afraid of happening.
Okay. What are you afraid of?
Huh?
What are you afraid of?
Tell us your fears.
So my fear is we start taking it too far. Like, I think why we got into reptiles is because they're different. It's a touch of nature. We like snakes. I think there's a menagerie of different reasons. But I think the fear I have is we go because I'm starting to see it with like even people making designer snakes, like hybrids, like burn balls. I see them trying to make that a thing. green pythons have been doing it for decades. But we get these people that like, they want to, at some point, they just want to keep changing it so much to where we fall under the same category as almost every other domesticated animal. And I think that's what, for me anyways, is what I think loses what makes reptiles special to me, is we lose the touch with nature at some point. And the reason why I say that is when you look at the plethora of domesticated animals, like your domesticated designer cows, chickens, and then obviously your big ones like cats and dogs. Dogs are probably the number one thing. How many dog people have organizations to help wild canids, to help, because I remember a couple of years ago when they introduced Colorado or wolves to Colorado, farmers had an absolute shit fit over it, just lost their mind. And it's like, well, you don't want to work on trying to preserve and work ways to, like other countries do with wild animals, to try to keep your livestock. It would be totally doable, but it's the fact we decided we wanted to reintroduce a canid that they probably have in their house, but they didn't want to work around trying to find a way to work with it than, trying to eradicate them or wanted them gone to begin with. So I think my fear is we take snakes too far, and then at some point I hate to put it like this, and God, this is going to make it sound like I'm bullying like snakes or ball pythons, but you
Everybody
see
bullies
it
ball
in
pythons.
ball pythons the most. And when I say that as like a lot of my Morelia friends want to see wild pythons, want to help nature. Rather, they have the funding to do it at any kind of substantial level is different, but they want to do more with nature. Jessica, I know you're a wildlife nut. You like going out and seeing these animals. Well, I think what happens is at some point we get too far along in domestication and too far into the inner workings of just captive breeding to where we lose what made reptiles in particular cool. Now, there's benefits to it, but I also think there's a lot of downside to it, because I think, like with most things, we'll lose a lot of stuff. And that's why I keep such an eclectic group of pythons, is because I like the variety, the evolutionary history of those snakes, not so much what I think I can make or what I can do with mutations. That's an interesting aspect to it, but it's not the only thing I find interesting. Probably, I wouldn't even call it the main reason I find reptiles interesting. It's just, I think a quote that was super simple, but I think really hit home was, Morse are different, they're not better. And I think we're in a hobby where we think they're better just sheerly because I hear we're evolving, or we're the industry's advancing when I hear that term. And I just go, no, 27 million years ago, ball pythons have been persisting. You're not going to make them better. On contrary, you're probably making them worse. I mean, they got a long history of, making it in the wild. I don't know. I think maybe sometimes we get I'm a little afraid we're going to get too far along where we lose touch of why we got interested in this to begin with. And that's what my fear of domestication of just snakes in general, not so much just ball pythons, but I mean, all of it for the most part.
I mean, as like a counterpoint to that, by keeping them in a domesticated situation, are we automatically putting unintentional pressures on the animal to start becoming domesticated? So like, how many generations, again, like how many generations does it take to get where, you're feeding it a diet that it's not, wouldn't naturally eat. You're in an environment that where it wouldn't.
Well, like what I don't want snakes to be is like the balloon mollies of, you know what I mean?
Did you watch that episode of Animal at Homes with the guy from Britain or something, the one who did the brain research or whatever, did this, I don't know if it was a study, but did that video about the brain size of ball pythons and all that. They did an interview together, and I only got clips of it because I haven't gone back and watched it yet. But they
It
reference.
makes me upset to watch that type of content.
Well, they said the future is essentially us breeding a lot of this stuff together. You know, all these different species and getting traits that are better in captivity than others, and creating into one singular snake. Obviously, you wouldn't be breeding balls or pythons to boas to colubrids.
I just feel like that's like perverse.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with a little bit of hybrid breeding. I don't really care. Like, if you're having fun and you label it, cool. But like, I want a dragon to be my friend.
Right.
Okay. I want it to be cool. I want it to have an asshole. I want it to have scales. I want it to look cool.
Well,
and it could be morphe or wild type, but I want it to be cool. If it's not cool and it looks like a balloon molly, the balloon molly equivalent of a ball python, which I guess right now is a scale is, like, that's not cool anymore. So that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, you're right. Like, but I also don't want them to go the other way where they're like, not even a ball python anymore, and they're just like burn ball, wall ball.
Well, we gotta find.
That's not that fun either.
Particularly with pythons, because we're facing so much regulation. I hate to pick on this guy because I recently saw it, but the guy is trying to really promote burn balls as like this new hot thing.
I've seen that. It's like kind of driving me crazy too. I mean, they're cool, but like, there's a lot of cool things in the world that we ought to just say. Like,
well, my thing is, if you do that, what happens if you took that collection, went to Georgia, went to Florida? What happens then? I think they would just outlaw it. They just
banned.
I think you open up their eyes to hybrids, and then they're just like, well, if we don't know what any of these animals are, and retics can breed with carpets, or retics can breed with berms, we know, and for the most part, all pythons for the most part can breed with each other. Then that leaves them wondering, well, it's just easier to ban all of it, at least with pythons. Yeah. I'm just referring to colubrids would probably be safer. Boas, I don't know how many of those hybrids are super viable. I'm talking like genus hybrids.
Yeah, a lot of them die.
Yeah,
like the anaconda boas didn't make it very long.
Yeah, so they don't seem to be as prevalent, but like pythons in them seem to be pretty, at least long enough, like enough to where it would concern me that if Fish and Wildlife couldn't tell, had issues with a boa, that if you had a burn ball, that they might just go, well, why don't we just ban all pythons then? If these nuts are going to breed them all together, then we don't want to take the chance of release.
Just a few hundred ligers. For the most part, I want to be nice to hybrid makers because I think it's like a niche hobby but I think it should stay pretty niche, Like,
I don't know. I always hear the argument, like, if you label it, it's okay. Like, the thing is, I think they're gorgeous. I like seeing this manifestation of science that who knew you could stick these together and this would happen and this is how their genes blend. I think it's incredible, but like, I really want to just stray away from it. And I always hear the argument like, well, as long as you label it, right? And I've even heard a story, I think it was Justin Julander, who said that they sold a hybrid carpet to someone sometime and labeled it. And then years later, they were at a pet shop and they saw the exact same snake mislabeled as some other carpet python. And it's like, just because you labeled it doesn't mean the next person's going to label it properly. Doesn't mean the next person isn't malicious. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever seen a Chihuahua crested gecko hybrid that was bred only a single generation back into a crested gecko, it's nearly indistinguishable from a crested gecko.
Which ones of those are even viable, though? I thought most of them weren't viable. Or do males
they're
do it?
viable or semi-viable, but I know, and if you've seen all I know is if you breed a ball python to an Angolan and make something and it turns out viable and you breed it one more time to a ball python and one more time to a ball python, suddenly you'll have the wackiest looking ball python that most people can hardly tell is a hybrid. Someone could easily do that maliciously, and so I'm just like not a fan of advocating for it in the first place.
So I'll back up your story from a personal post I saw in my local Facebook group. You're right. And it's unfortunate that a lot of these animals will probably go through a lot of hands, and at some point, it gets lost. There's no question about it. At some point, something's going to drop off. For instance, I was on one of my Facebook groups. Someone asked, hey, I bought this chocolate ball python. Can someone help confirm if that's what the gene is? And I saw the picture, and I'm like, dude, you got a wall, a woma wall. And I'm just like,
are you serious?
It was a 50-50 hybrid. Well, I don't think those animals could breed anyways. I think they're sterile. But
there are some that can, like blood balls and
yeah. Well, that's
the
African and Southeast Asian stuff is more closely related to each other, and then like the Indo and Australian stuff is a separate clade. But yeah, like so retics are the one animals, the one clade that are Australian animals that made it past the Wallach line because they're genetically more closely related to Australian animals. That's why the hybrids between the berm and the rock or the berm and the retic are either mostly sterile or very rarely do you get any good fertility out of them. It's because they're not that closely related.
Yeah,
retic is probably more closely related to like Antaresia than it is to a Burmese python.
Has anybody tried super dwarf chondros?
No, I've seen the ball.
She's back. Holy.
I don't know what happened.
Well, and it's like that's what I'm saying is like finding out those phylogenetic relationships through hybridization. It's like super interesting, right?
Yeah.
But it's like that's what I'm saying. Like there's a lot of things in the world that are like super cool and feel cool, but it's like it's not good to do. And I think
some people want to do it just to like make their life harder. Like Jeff from JMG was like, why don't you breed the rock python to that blood python to get a bigger?
No, that's what I was saying. I was like, I wanted to make a retic blood, but
I was like, I don't know about that. Yeah.
Does anybody know, like in a wall, who is bottom and who is top? I can't even imagine.
Oh, I saw a good one. I saw a children's python breeding a blood python. That was it.
Who was the bottom and who was top? Was the children's the male?
The children python was top, and it looked like it reminded me of the anglerfish.
Oh,
where it was just the little male attached to the side of this big python, and I was like, "Oh God!"
We love that for him.
Yeah,
I mean, kind of like in that same vein, based on what you were saying, William. Like, I totally agree with you. Like, I'm a serious ball python person who has like a genuine respect for the species. I love the natural history. I love all pythons and snakes, and I care deeply about like where they're from, and I'd love to see them in the wild. At the same time, so I totally agree with you on that front, and I agree that I would also be fearful of morphs just completely being like all you care about is that and this next step and never just enjoying what you're doing. But I think I like to like try to just like push more positivity out onto people, and hopefully we can like overcome the fear that people will actually care about natural history. And for me, the morphs are cool because it's like I do love this base form of the python so much that the morphs are like a physical representation of the wonders of their genetics and how they work and what they do and what these snakes their bodies are capable of, with only a little artificial selection like we're talking about. I think it's amazing, but I agree with you that so I'm like totally pro morph, but I also love the snake for
there's
exactly
like a fine line. It's
like we don't want to go too far, but I totally
I'm with you. I'm
a
morph nut. I like my morphs. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm totally, but like for me, like I will keep wild types of all. Typically, like I said, I have 4 normal het for nothing ball pythons because I genuinely like the look of a wild type ball python. I think they're gorgeous the way they are.
I have mine too.
So I think, but I am with you, and I do think so. In the domestication part, I think, we need snakes that are adjusted to captivity. Though we don't want like these wild caught, hellacious animals that are terrified. We don't need Hare like pythons that are just the drop dead because they have a stroke because they're terrified of you looking at them all the time. But we need to get away from that. But I think there's like I think the fear I have though is you see it happen where it gets so hybrids do it quick and morphs will do it. And that's my fear with the morphs is you start seeing lack of interest. It's not so much ball python, then it just becomes morph. And there's almost no we don't even care the ball python aspect of it, and that's what makes me nervous.
Some people, I don't like
some
to lump
people, not
myself
everyone,
in
for
there,
sure.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I
Well, like,
see what you're saying.
it's like in the back in like the dog, relating it back to like dog breeding. Each breed from the AKC was bred to do a specific job, but some of the clubs have done a better job of keeping the animal true to its heritage. So like they breed
Also,
German
some of the
Shepherds
clubs have
that are
done a better job ruining their hips and making them fall apart.
exactly. So
So,
some
like,
of the clubs have done the worst. Have done a horrible job
Yeah.
at it.
like my
So-
favorite dogs are like land race dog breeds. Like these are the dogs been running around the bushes outside of this village for the last 2,000 years.
Yeah,
Like
those
that's
are really
the
cool.
breed. Those are my favorite, and so I'm biased. That's all.
Right.
I love knowing like my day job is a dog groomer, and a lot of times people are like wondering why a dog is doing a specific behavior, and I'm like, well, a cattle dog's gonna be biting you because it was bred for generations to battle cows that are thousands of times bigger than it. It's not gonna be worried about what you want to do.
Mhm.
So like these traits that are behavioral traits that are bred into them that at one point used to do a job, but now are we preserve? There's the same kind of thing as like, are you preserving that by breeding them, or are you not preserving that by breeding them? So I think can be the same thing in the reptile world, where you can go too far. You can start doing damage and making it less than.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I never thought about the breed aspect of things. I usually jump straight to species stuff when I think of that stuff. Like usually, like when I think of dogs, I did a little like pseudo survey about it because I was genuinely curious what the general public like. I did it was like I said, it was just a silly little survey. It wasn't a huge sample size, but I was at an NRBC show. I had a little card, and I put your top 5 favorite species or favorite animals, domesticated included, because I was curious what people would put. And as you would assume, most people put dogs. Rather it was a certain breed of dog or something, they put dogs. And out of I think it was a little over 100 I did, there was only 1 or 2 that put coyote or wolf. So when there's it's like a disconnect that seems to happen at some point when domestication goes to a point where it's not wild anymore, which obviously especially with big, large mammalian predators like a wolf or a big carnivore like that, you're going to want it more domesticated because, for safety reasons, I can almost see the big snakes maybe going more that route, because obviously they're big and dangerous, but some stuff, it's just a fear I have of where, and maybe there's nothing we can do about it. Honestly, I could be preaching about my fear of it, but it probably will just, 2, 3, 1,000, 2,000 years from now, who knows what it'll look like,
Yeah, I mean, people are just detached from the nature anyway. Like, there's this whole, I don't know. I accidentally went to a liberal arts school.
Issues at that point.
So, like, you get taught, like, people, like, like the cave paintings from France from 30,000 years ago, where it clearly shows, like, the way a lion is supposed to look in a cave bear. Like, they looked at a lion up close, and they were like, that's pretty cool. I'm going to draw it in a cave. People like charismatic megafauna, but none of it's so detached from our reality. We're not like intimate with anything natural anymore, unless you're like a hunter or a herper, or you like looking at birds or whatever. So like we're so detached. I'm not surprised a dog is everybody's favorite canid.
Right.
Yeah.
Like only furries are really into wolves, it turns out.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, I was just curious because I was what was it? Had to do with snakes. Shit, I lost my train of thought now. Never mind, forgot it. It's gone.
To the question about like our localities, can they really be considered localities anymore? I think that's a really good point. I don't think it's a very popular point. I'm wondering if localities become more like breeds. And what's the thought on like that? Like
Yeah,
the
they
idea
start
that,
to drift genetically the second you remove them.
right.
Yeah.
So like it's all like marketing.
Yeah.
I'm not a big locality. Like I like localities for if you're gonna do like maybe like work on like different populations of the same species. But I hate the term locality applied to some species because they imply like green pythons. You hear people will introvertedly like compare, like when you ask what's your favorite green python locality, oh I like Biak and then Aru, and I go those aren't even locale, those are totally different species. They're full species. And I think that's where it gets kind of murky, where I'm not the biggest fan of the term locality because it gets misunderstood or misused.
And do they want like a particular look from that island too? Like what they really think of Aru is like a high white one, like their favorite kind ever.
Yeah,
but
like
if you
all
went
right,
to the island and you looked at all the Aru
it's
breed
like a
trees,
morph within a locality
Yes.
is what they call the locality. Yeah.
right? Like I like Miami corn snakes, but if I went to Miami-Dade County, only like a small percentage of them are actually gray based as adults. So it's actually like a selectively bred locality that's not even a locality anymore, but it's named after a locality. And the best version of it doesn't even exist in the wild anymore. And it's all hubris and man is fallible. I don't know.
We see it in all sorts of species.
Right.
I mean, just like blood pythons don't look like what they usually do out of the wild. Carpet pythons don't look like what they typically, some of the carpets don't look like they typically do out of the wild because you just selectively bred to get this either cleaner look, brighter colors, stripes.
Right. So to me, like
reduced...
the genetic boat has been set adrift the second it comes in, and people start just even picking arbitrarily what to breed, not even intentionally selecting. We're already drifting. So you can call it by the name. I'm just like not that worried about it.
Yeah.
All right. We have been doing this for 2 hours and 21 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And the cat just came in and my child. So let's go around the little room. Joe, do you want to do your little thing? And then just everybody tell why someone should selectively breed ball pythons. Just any reason why you think they should. It's a good idea. You want to do your little PowerPoint at the same time?
Can you say the question again?
Just why anyone who's listened to this far for 2 hours and 21 minutes should breed ball pythons selectively. Just any kind of positivity.
I just think it's worth aspiring to like a higher level of like purpose. To me, selective breeding is like this pursuit to go away from, like you said, the like, well, I got the morph with the most names, and so I paired it to the one with the most names. It's just like, just have a little more intention with what you're doing, and I just think it makes it like a little more enjoyable for you, even just like as a person. I think even if you don't look so too deeply into it, we're not solving the world's problems. We're just, trying to like create a nice snake, whether it's the one that feeds the best or the one that handles the best or the one that looks the best and does all those things together or something. I think it's like something noble to aspire to, and it shows that you at least like care enough to think a little more complexly about the snakes that you're working with. To me, it just like demonstrates your care versus a lack of care and a pursuit of money or something. We can show the thing if you want. This is just, I wasn't really sure how much we were going to talk about like specific examples of selective breeding. This is just like a few projects that I've worked on that sort of like emphasize these feelings. Again, I can go into. Jessica, do you want to go like full screen or something? Or
can I? Yes.
It's slideshow. Man.
Wow.
This was just like one topic I wanted to make. Like for me, selection. We talked about selective breeding, but to me, a big an important point to make is that it's not just breeding, it's just selection in general. A lot of it comes down to selecting the right animal to purchase just to start your project. This was a few years, 2019, I reached out to a friend of mine and said, I want something super orange dream yellow belly. And these were 2 snakes that he offered to me. They're both completely gorgeous. But if you go to the next slide, you'll see that Then he sent me this snake, which was in fact less genes and less expensive than the other two. But I saw something in this snake that really stood out to me, which was that bold black and orange. It was a simpler animal. I didn't care that it was just like more genes. This is the one that I decided to pick and to move forward with my projects. So next, you'll see this is him grown up. And one of the
shit!
Wow.
Yeah, one of the first pairings I did was breeding him to this vanilla cream female. And like you might be asking, well, you could have bought the one with fire. Well, what I really want is the vanilla because again, I'm being selective here.
Mhm.
Vanilla as opposed to fire, in my opinion, it holds saturation and it holds black better. So that was my goal. And then if you go next, you'll see.
Sorry, I was
You're
reading.
good. This is one of his offspring, an orange dream yellow belly vanilla. I paired him to, again, I've selectively chosen my favorite super vanilla female that hatched from an unrelated pair. And then the result is the next slide, which is this. So 6 years in the making, I finally made from all the ingredients, choosing the best ones to buy, the best ones out of the clutch, the ones that exhibited all the traits that I like, doing my best to steer away from inbreeding when possible. And then I hatched this, the Orange Dream Yellow Belly Super Vanilla, which I just think is gorgeous.
It is a really dark super vanilla. Like a lot
Mhm.
of super vanillas wash out real bad. Which you
Well,
can
a lot of
maybe
them
like
do
that,
wash
but,
out.
you know.
Yeah, a lot of them wash out really bad. And I have a 2009 Super Vanilla that I've also been line breeding a million different iterations over, trying to make things that look like him because there's a huge discrepancy in quality in that gene. And it's one of my favorite genes, but it's definitely one that exists in forms that are different and better or not from others. And then I have like one other small project on this next portion. So, well, this was also just another animal that the original Super OD sired. I just thought it was kind of a cool example. Just gorgeous, black and yellow. There's no desert ghost. There's no whatever. This was just a gorgeous snake he made. I just thought it was cool. And again, how I always emphasize, like we've been saying, the genes involved don't really matter. Whether it's recessive, doesn't really matter. Codon doesn't matter. I just personally think that look and phenotype is what matters, and you can do certain things to make it like easier on you as a breeder to accurately reproduce. Next is, so then this is the snake on the left is the first ball python that I ever got. I still have her. She's like, will always be my favorite snake in my collection, or probably ever in general. She's just a really cool, light colored, high gold, reduced aberrant pattern. I bought her in 2002. It was my 7th birthday present. I was told it was a captive born snake. I don't know like how many people were captive breeding in 2002. It's possible, but she could have been a captive hatch. I bred her to this banana Enchi clown, which was the start of my banana Enchi clown projects. And then the next slide, that's her on a clutch. And as you can see, this is another aspect of selective breeding where you're not breeding purely for phenotype. You can also breed for size and fecundity. And on to the next slide. These were some of the animals that she produced. Some of the Enchi het clowns that I chose to hold back for my het clown females, as well as the one on the far left is without Enchi, but you can still see a really reduced, nice pattern, which is what I was going for in like the end game here. Onto the next slide. These are just some of those Enchis grown up a little. You can see how like the high gold reduced pattern really works here. So these are not super Enchis, these are Enchis. And then you go imagine the super from this, and that's sort of my whole philosophy is just.
Are the blacks really that black? My God, I've never seen black so dark.
They are. I mean, they were at that time of life, at least. I mean, I have. In the next photos, you'll see the ones I kept. I'm not sure if I kept that one. But you can see this is that normal het clown, non-enchy female grown up. She's gravid and glowing, so there's a little bit going on there. But you can see how nice she looks as a breeding female compared to an axanthic, just for reference. And then this was her enchy sister breeding. Again, sometimes I'll inbreed to some degree if it helps further the project, but I always try to outcross whenever possible. This is breeding to a super banana clown that I hatched from an unrelated pairing. So their grandfather is related, but I, try my best in short term to outcross and then further outcross again in the future. But the next slide is some of the babies resulting from them. So you've got just enchy clowns and some enchy bananas and a banana clown on the left, and then a super enchy banana clown on the right. And in my opinion, this is just a demonstration of how kind of working from a base and putting complementary phenotypes together leads to a product that, to other people, to make a snake like this, it might have to be Orange Dream or something too. But you're just now, since you haven't done that, imagine if you did put Orange Dream. It like gives you more headroom to expand in the future. The next image shows one of those clowns with a little growth on it.
God, that's better than fire enchy clowns I see.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's sort of the goal, It's just like starting with that positive base, so that when I do put fire in it, it looks exceptional, The next slide shows that snake again, and just you can see how the head pattern is very atypical of your standard enchy clown. So there may be even a fully separate incomplete dominant morph in here or something, but the point is that, whether I knew that or not, I predicted that they might go well together, and it turns out that they have gone well together. It's just about like having that intention, as I mentioned. And then the last or second to last slide, here's just like one of the banana enchy clowns. And then the one on the right, this year, this is a photo from like last week. I finally hatched a super enchy clown from this lineage, but without the banana. So I'm kind of excited for that one. And then that might be the end, or there might be another one. Oh yeah. And then this, the original high gold reduced pattern het clown female that I showed earlier. I finally, because a lot of the animals that have hatched from this, I'm like, wow, they look really orange. Imagine, if that was like Orange Dream. So then I finally, this last year, bred her to a completely unrelated super Orange Dream clown type animal, male, completely unrelated to anything. The clutch, as I mentioned in the last show, I think was a disaster, and this was the only one that survived. But you can see when you take those genetics and combine it with an Orange Dream, you get something like this, where this animal, all it's supposed to be is an Orange Dream het clown. And wow. I don't know about you, but you can go look at single gene Orange Dreams, and I don't think they all look like this. All it says to me is there's something going on. And an animal like this, to most people, an Orange Dream het clown would be like $100 animal that they don't think about. But I see something like this, and this is a step towards my, polygenic project that I'll probably end up keeping this animal, because it's, it's a building block for something better.
Yeah, that's a beautiful animal.
Wow, thank you for that presentation.
Yeah, sorry if that was kind
beautiful,
of a bit much.
Man. You need to get in the sunset, man. You need to show them how it's done. I mean, no joke. You get some of those contrasted animals, if you can get that into sunset and get because I've seen sunsets with contrast. And, the problem with sunset is they start out pretty cool, and then the pattern even fades, and it just becomes more of a very faded animal. But some of the stuff you got with that high contrast, real clean, nice contrast and stuff, I think would do really, really well. Really well. I don't know.
Interesting.
That's what I think of. I think of like genes that like you could, I mean, I don't know. I think you can make some phenomenal stuff with other genes with some of those looks. Like
Yeah.
Sunset was the first one that came to mind to me, but I mean, you could, all your albinism traits would look really cool because they have nice stark contrast.
Mhm.
I don't think you'd get much bleed over like you would with some people when they breed the albinism traits. They get a lot of that bleed into the whites and stuff. But you seem to keep real good contrast with your things from what it looks like.
Appreciate it. Maybe I'll send you one and you can pair it to a sunset.
What? We're doing a deal?
It's such a long process. I wouldn't be opposed to it because I'd almost like to add your blood stuff to, particularly my puzzle stuff or my that orange dream mail, that your original yellow belly orange dream mail. I immediately thought tri-stripe and sunset. I thought would do really, really well with that male or with that particular animal.
If a snake has no
yeah.
alien head eyes and you put it in puzzle, is it alien head eye free in puzzle, or does it?
It depends. You can get them. I don't know if it. Maybe. It depends. You'd probably get a wide range of looks, but
like I don't know. To me, like, because the tri-stripe alien head eyes is the third stripe on each, or the two extra stripes. I'm very sensitive to how fat my eyes are when like making hats off of them. Or like how wavy my eyes are. It's like I am going to do Super Hurricane tri-stripes, but I'm a little scared it's going to be like
2J. I think with like the sun, like puzzle in particular with that animal would give me a lot of hurricane vibes. Like a lot of, it might break open the barrier from the top of the alien head and just turn it into very J hooks, a lot of connected J hooks potentially.
That's cool. I think that sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
All right. Kate, why do you think someone who's listening?
And I gotta follow that now? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
He's been doing this since 2002.
That's nothing. You're good.
I mean, for my heartline animals, I believe it adds value to pet animals. So, particularly fostering where those animals are going to be going and what their life is going to be like after our care, and considering that, I really think that opens it up to adding value to these animals that people call, pet level, because let's face it again, breeding for specific traits have worked in other domesticated animals, and I think that it can be beneficial to ball pythons as well. And I agree, picking animals that you like the look of and the temperament of, it can only make things better. I don't think there's a downside to it.
Mm-hmm.
And breeding with intention is always better than breeding without intention.
Right. There's nothing that makes me sadder in this world. It's the end of the episode, so no one will hear this part. Then somebody being like, damn, I got to breed this quick because it's not, like, this animal isn't doing good. It's not thriving here. Hopefully I can get my money out of it. And I understand that feeling a lot. My friends, I have friends, it's fine. But, like, that's where we're fucked. Like, you're so beholden to getting your investment back out. You can't even make the decision you need to make, which is not to breed that animal, because it might, like, give up the ghost the second it penetrates one female because it's just too excited. Like that obviously isn't an animal that should be bred, even if it was $10,000. Like, lost the plot. Anyway, William, my opinion's dumb. What is your opinion on why people should selectively breed ball pythons for any trait that they find desirable in ball pythons?
Like I said, even if you're looking at it as a business aspect, it would make your business stick out because your animals will look different. I mean, look at Ozzy. Ozzy was always known for his exceptional orange dreams. And I think the Chris was it Hernan or whatever with the Scrambler? He's another one. I know he sticks out because of his spectacular looking animals. JD Constriction with his Xanthic stuff. If you have animals that are more or that look different and better looking subjective, but like animals that you find really attractive, not only does it keep you engaged, because I think that's a problem, is people have such a fast mindset that they're on to the next, rather than planned out, well orchestrated, planned to what you're trying to get to. That the more drawn out it is, the more invested you are, the more you're you're less likely to bomb a project because you're more invested in it than someone who just gets it in a year or produces it in one season and then goes and turns to sell it to the highest bidder. And I always found this funny is I've heard people talk down on selective breeding because they say, why would I only want to make something 10% better? But then I hear them with subtle genes talk about how, well, we should be happy if we make it 10% better. So I always thought that was kind of silly. So I go, well, then why wouldn't I just selectively breed it then? You know, and I don't know. There's definitely more benefits than there is harm to it. Because, like I said, if you extrapolate and look at all types of species, you definitely see it benefited in pretty much everything else. You know, it doesn't. And like I said, rather you want to or not, and I'm not going to say this is going to happen next year, 5 years, 10 years. At some point, ball pythons will be like every other species where that's primarily what you're getting is a lot of these mutations or are selectively bred to look better. Well, I don't know what to look better because, like I said, that's subjective. But have a distinguished look, and you'll see more breeders, I think, go more towards that. I think there's a lot of breeders like you guys. You guys are doing it now, but it's not till the train runs out or the train hits the end of the tracks with this constant like multi-recessives or incomplete dominant stacking to where they'll go, either they'll get out or go back and look and see, well, these guys were onto something. And then if they want to do it, either they got to start from scratch or they get it from you guys, you know, who put in the work and the time to get the desirable looks and the nice traits, you know. So I think in the long run, it's going to be the way it goes because history and all species have proved that's where it happens. It's just a matter, can you wait it out? And with the way the ball python industry is going at such an astronomical fast pace that who knows when that could be. So I don't know. Like I said, there's more benefits than there is bad.
Yeah, and it's not like it's like more exclusive. Like you have to stop what you're doing, go get a normal ball python from Africa. Like Will's referring to, like within like an idea, a theme for a collection, like Xanthic or like increasing orange and base genes or whatever. Like that could just be your running theme that you're thinking about.
I think like a lot of people who got like, you know, had that female Joe, like I think a lot of people nowadays would be rushing to give it a name and to give that specific type, you know, they'd be like, I want to give that jet gene a name, and they'd be really rushing to give, you know, get that to be like, you know, the XYZ gene, and they'd be rather than
now we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it with Europe, where we're getting a lot of genes that look awfully similar to stuff we've had in the States, but because it came from Europe, it clearly must be different.
It holds its pinky up like this.
Yeah.
Like I said, like Europe hasn't fucked the U.S. before in fake stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I just dream a dream that ball pythons just slides gently back into like a normal snake breeding hobby world where it fits perfectly where it's supposed to be. It's not like, fuck you, do it as fast as possible, otherwise you're a loser. And it just is just like a normal breeding hobby. I think ball pythons can do it. I believe in you.
Yeah, and I think ball pythons too will always stay as a whole, as a species, will stay really relevant in the pet trade because they just are just by nature such a good pet compared to other pythons. I've seen this firsthand from other pythons. Like people hear about Antaresia and go, oh, they're small, that's perfect. But then when they actually handle the animal in person and they see how quick, especially timid, because ophidiophobia is still a big fear for most people in the world. So that fast movement triggers that fear response. And especially if it's a parent getting it for a kid, they're not going to want to deal with that fast moving. If it gets out of the kid's hands, I'm not catching it. But a ball python in most cases will just sit there like a lump on the log. You know, you don't have to worry about it darting off, hiding underneath something for the most part. So I think like they'll always have a presence. So I'm not saying ball pythons are going to dip and become like a dirt species again. But I'm just saying, I think like what you're saying, Jessica, I think they need to hit.
Yeah, they
more
should
of
be,
that.
to me, they should be like boas, like mutt boas,
One of the things that
where there's like
we do select for
lines,
is not
whatever.
head shy, too. Is for being less head shy.
Yep.
Mhm.
Less head shy.
Yeah, less head shy. So that like, because one of the things that makes the moms jump when they hold the animal is when the animal darts away because they went near its head because they want to pet its head, because they want to pet it like a dog.
Oh yeah, I have an example of that in Tennessee. There was a lady who wanted, she was interested in short-tailed pythons, and I tell them, I go, they're kind of like the more metal version of a ball python, and most ball pythons, if you boop it on the snoot, it kind of just hides or goes the other way. But she did it to the short-tailed python, and this short-tailed python just popped her back in her hand after she tried to tap it on the nose. And I go, thank God you didn't drop this.
Yeah.
So,
is it time to selectively breed normals? No, that's not what I'm saying. And I know, I think he's making a joke, but like,
I mean, I don't know. Joe did, and it looks awesome.
well, like,
you can, but I mean, I think the cool thing about selective breeding, and that like a lot of people neglect, is they think like, oh, it's either selective breeding or it's morphs, and I think we just like, I think it goes hand in hand, and that should be obvious. And I'm just trying to get more people to like sort of understand that.
Yeah, exactly. I think the problem is people think they're so segregated, but they're one and the same. It's just when you don't know how to selectively breed, or you don't look into it either. You just don't pay attention to it, and you just think morph A, morph B makes morph C, but you don't think about all the intricate genes that go along with each animal and why you get such a wide range of looks. I mean, even if you bred two normals together, you will get a wide range of looks, and that's what that's basically what you're making, influencing in your morphs, is what does that base gene look like? What does that normal look like that's creating those looks and those inheritable traits,
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's say goodbye. Are you ready?
Okay.
Let's say goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
All right, bye everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Bye.
Some made it to the end. Bless their hearts.